Chapter 1180. Under the Towering Tower. In the deep secret room, Li Qingshan sat cross-legged, put the smallest monster Dan into his mouth, and swallowed it. This thing would not melt like the elixir, and it required a lot of effort to refine, which was why he had delayed it until now. Now that the divine talisman of great creation had finally turned losses into profits, he was not afraid of consuming the power of vow, so he could give it a try. He secretly activated the divine talisman of great creation, and the power of vow turned into spiritual power that wrapped around the golden Dan, forming a dense ball of light that swelled in his stomach. Although he could not look inside, Li Qingshan was already very familiar with the refining process. He calmed his mind and used the power of vow to the extreme, stimulating the power of vow. If the picture was magnified 100 times, thousands of silver lines could be seen rising from the monster Dan, and each line was thinner than a strand of hair. This should have been easy to absorb and melt, but this world did not allow him to do so. As soon as the power left the monster Dan, it immediately escaped and blended into the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, forming an extremely strong shackle. It seemed to be telling him that all attempts to restore his power were futile. Li Qingshan had already expected this, so he was not surprised. He continued to stimulate the power of the monster Dan. His goal was not to restore his power with these monster dawn, but to truly create a brand new power that belonged to himself, a power that was difficult to cultivate in the 9 regions, a chance that he had overlooked. Gu Yenying climbed up to the platform of the tower. The mountain wind was cold and piercing through her ears. This was her favorite sound, but now she had to wrap her cloak tightly around herself and hold the feather of the rock in her hand. Her cheeks that were red from the cold showed a smile again, and she imagined that one day she would become the rock and reach the other side of the stars. This was her cultivation. Following Li Qingshan's advice, she would let her will be recognized by the feather of the rock, and finally reach the agreement, receive the inheritance, turn the eagle into the rock, and go straight to the 9 heavens. Maybe one day I can fly higher than the guy in the cellar. After an unknown amount of time, Li Qingshan finally completely refined the first monster Dan, but not only did he not gain any power, but he also consumed a lot of power of vow. He was not discouraged. He picked up the second monster Dan. Swallow it. Time ticked by, and Li Qingshan only had one Yao core left in his hands, which was the one from the White Ape King. But all his previous efforts would be wasted. There was also a hint of solemnity on his face. However, his heart was filled with expectation. He could clearly feel that his goal was close at hand. Sword light flashed in the courtyard. A group of beautiful women dressed to the nines were practicing their swords. The one in the lead was the red-clothed woman who had been bestowed the Raging Flame sword by Li Qingshan. She was dressed in a fiery red outfit and stood with a sword in her hand, acting as an instructor. Her original name was Yuan Feihong, but after the White Ape King died, she unceremoniously dropped the Yuan, leaving only Feihong. Originally, she could have changed her name to Li Feihong or Gu Feihong. Although she was indebted to these 2 manor lords, she was not very willing to do so. However, she heard that the old witch had shamelessly wanted to change her surname, but was rejected by the manor lords. Imagining her expression at that time, she found it funny. Sister Feihong, do you think I practiced this move correctly? Idiot, you've copied that book several times. How can you not even understand such a simple move? I was so dizzy from copying that book that I felt nauseous and dizzy. How could I care what was written in it? All right, I'll show you guys one more time. Watch carefully. Feihong could not help but recall a few days ago when the manor lord had suddenly summoned everyone. She had thought it was for a banquet and fun, but in the end, he had asked them to copy books. In order to repay his kindness, she had copied very seriously, except for the White Ape King's glorious deeds, but she had mastered the 30 pages of the sword manual. The others did not have the patience. Sigh, I'd rather serve the manor lord than copy books. I'm still a little jealous. Hee hee, what a little hussy. I think you can't wait for it. I can't wait for it. The manor lord is so powerful and treats people so well. He's much better than that hairy old monkey. The manor lord has a deputy. He doesn't care about us. Yeah, I can't even think of a beauty like that. I don't even have the strength to be jealous. But I heard that the manor lord and deputy sleep in separate beds. What do you think their relationship is? I guess it's, shut up. Fei Hong shouted angrily. She swung the blazing sword and cut a large blue stone in the courtyard. A bunch of stupid women. Do you remember what Ho Hong Tao said? If others don't treat you as humans, then you don't treat yourselves as humans either. Practice your swordsmanship well. Whoever doesn't do well, I'll kick her off the mountain. Yuan Fei Hong, what's so great about you? You're not the chief, so what right do you have to tell us what to do? Do you think you can strut around just because the manor lord gave you a sword? That's right. With our looks, we can live comfortably wherever we go. Don't tell me that we really have to fight and kill like those stinky men. The White Ape King and Ho Hong Tao were so powerful, but they were still killed. Yeah, the wind and the sun hurt our skin too much. This is our good fortune, but some people don't know how to appreciate it. Let's go. We're not practicing anymore. The swords fell to the ground, sparks flying and clanging. You fools! Fei Hong gritted her teeth. Humph! Who's a fool if you spend so much effort practicing your swordsmanship and then get killed? You guys are leaving too? Sister Fei Hong, don't force us. We're really not made for this. I hope you become a peerless master soon. In the blink of an eye, she was the only one left in the courtyard. She was so angry that her whole body was trembling. She looked at the tower and gradually calmed down. She wondered how the two manor lords were doing in seclusion. She still remembered that angry roar. If she's not a human, then what are you? She still longed for that graceful and independent figure. But thinking about what those stupid women said, it wasn't completely unreasonable. No one liked to kill or be killed, and she was no exception. She touched her face. It seemed to have become rougher. Am I really a fool? In the deep secret room, Li Qingshan let out a long sigh and slowly stood up. His heart was a little heavy. At the last moment, he had used up his Yao core. In the end, he had still failed. He had wasted a lot of power of will in vain, but the result was nothing. The goal that he had thought was close at hand suddenly seemed far away, unreachable. It wasn't that he couldn't accept failure, but his heart couldn't help but feel a little heavy. He walked out of the tower alone. The bright moon in the sky had made up for its shortcomings and turned into a full moon. Gu Yenying stood at the top of the tower, wanting to say something but hesitating. At this moment, what she needed was not comfort. Chapter 1181. The night was as cold as water, and the moon was as cold as frost. Li Qingshan walked through the shadows of the trees. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a sword piercing through the air. A red light flashed in the courtyard in front of him. He walked over and saw a woman practicing swordsmanship. He looked at her for a while and shook his head. Something's wrong. Fei Hong turned around in surprise. Villa Master, you're out. Yes, you're Fei Hong, right? Li Qingshan was a little distracted. If it wasn't for the fiery sword, he would not have recognized her. Villa Master still remembers me. Fei Hong was pleasantly surprised. Villa Master, what's wrong? Your swordsmanship is wrong. But I practice according to the swordsmanship manual. What you practice is different. Besides, the swordsmanship manual is wrong. Villa Master, please enlighten me. Fei Hong immediately offered the fiery sword with both hands. Li Qingshan glanced at her, and casually accepted the scorching sword of fire, swinging it around slowly. His movements were sluggish and sluggish, not because he wanted to demonstrate the path of the sword to her, but because even though he had recovered quite a lot of his strength, he was still weaker than her. In her eyes, it felt as if he was with heaven and earth. The hidden sword of heaven and earth was the most brilliant swordsmanship that Li Qingshan had come across. When cultivated to the highest level, everything in the world was under his control. He could be extremely soft and gentle, or extremely strong. However, the ironic thing was that when he landed in this small world, everything in the world was useless to him. His emotions fluctuated, and his sword momentum also paused. He suddenly turned around. "You have a saber?" There seemed to be a flash of lightning. Fei Hong was startled. Only then did she realize that it was his gaze. In the darkness, there was a charcoal-like glow. "Villa Master, this is the Ape Deity Villa. How can there be a knife?" The light dimmed again. Li Qingshan returned the fiery sword to her. "Forget it. Continue practicing." He turned around and continued walking. "Villa Master, I have one more thing to ask you." "What is it?" Li Qingshan turned around. Fei Hong told him what happened during the day. She hesitated. "Do you think I should practice swordsmanship?" "How would I know?" Li Qingshan spread his hands. "Huh." In Fei Hong's eyes, he was filled with mystery. He was practically omnipotent. "Your swordsmanship isn't right. I can teach you. You have to choose your own path." "But how should I choose?" "Those who wield the sword die by the sword." All of them were right. Practicing swordsmanship meant that one would be stained with blood and might even die on the streets. It was indeed better to be a canary. Moreover, it was more relaxing and comfortable. But I don't think you can walk this path. "Why?" "Because you're not an idiot." "I'm not stupid." Fei Hong was stunned. "That's why you don't practice the sword. You will regret it for the rest of your life. You don't even have what they have." "I understand. I'm not an idiot." Fei Hong smiled. "Wolves eat meat and dogs eat shit. Everyone has their own way of living. If you practice swordsmanship well, even if you get married in the future, your husband's family will have to be polite to you. With such a heaven-sent opportunity, you actually don't know how to grasp it. It's just that you can't bear the hardships. Yet you still say that peace is a blessing. You deserve to eat shit for the rest of your life." Fei Hong listened to him talk about forks and shit. It was really dirty, but she suddenly felt enlightened. She couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Villa Master, you're too interesting. But I won't marry. I want to master the peerless swordsmanship and break the void." This was something that even a master like Ho Hongtao wouldn't dare to talk about. But coming from the mouth of a girl who had almost nothing, it was a dream. What happens after you break the void? This. Fei Hong was speechless. Her blood was originally boiling, but at this moment, there was a trace of coldness in the night breeze. The difficulty of a dream was not only because of the twists and turns of the road, but also because no one could predict what would happen after it was realized. What if after breaking the void, she was exiled in the void forever? What if she was swallowed by a powerful demon the moment she arrived in another world? In this aspect, his above the ninth heaven was not much better than her breaking the void. You can slowly figure it out yourself. Li Qingshan walked away with his hands behind his back. Fei Hong looked at his back and felt a wave of distress. He had finally solved a problem, but then he threw her an even bigger problem. She couldn't understand after thinking for a while. "Forget it. I'll think about it when the time comes. Watch me master a peerless swordsmanship and make those stupid women regret it." Other people could choose not to think about some problems, but Li Qingshan had to think about it. This small failure was not a blow at all compared to the trials of life and death he had experienced. but it just so happened to arouse the deepest doubts in his heart in this situation. What was waiting for him above the ninth heaven? Even if he had the bull demon's persistence, the tiger demon's bravery, and thousands of years of hard work, it would all be an illusion in the end. Or, as the Clam King of Mirage Sea had said, the world was an illusion in the first place. Everything was just the ravings of others in their dreams. Li Qingshan walked to the side of a pond. A full moon was reflected in the pond, as if he wanted to get close to someone. Suddenly his heart moved. He could not help but bend down and pick up that full moon. However, the water rippled and gently wrapped around his fingertips. The moonlight moved with it. The moon in the mirror was naturally out of reach. His mind was completely attracted by the rippling moon. He reached out again, but he missed again. Only water flowed through the gaps between his fingers. As the water calmed down, the full moon condensed on the surface of the water again. His disappointment immediately turned into hope. He was so serious with every attempt that he forgot everything around him, including all the failures just now had. He did stupid things that even a child would not do. After countless attempts, he suddenly realized, wait, that's not right. It's winter now. Why isn't the pond frozen? In the blink of an eye, the pond was sealed by ice. Even the bright moon was covered by dark clouds. His surroundings were dark and silent. Li Qingshan was dumbfounded. He smiled bitterly. Have I gone mad? Even now, he still missed the moon in the water. With the sincerity of a newborn, it was so gentle and close that he wanted to hold it in his arms. Like a bolt of lightning cutting through the night sky, a shadow suddenly lit up in the deep sea of consciousness. A black ape was hanging upside down. It stretched out its long arms as if it was fishing for something. A chant came out of it. Ape demon fishing for the moon becomes empty. A huge amount of information gushed out from the sea of consciousness and turned into the art of ape demon fishing for the moon. That's right, this was the 5th transformation of the 9 transformations of demons and gods. Ape demon transformation. However, Li Qingshan could not laugh. He mumbled, ape demon fishing for the moon becomes empty, empty. Different from the ox demon transformation and the tiger demon transformation. The ape demon did not have the perseverance of the ox demon, nor did it have the ambition of the tiger demon to fight against the heavens and earth. It did not have the slightest bit of tragic aura. The scene even had a lot of innocence. The ape only wanted to fish up the moon in the water. This was destined to be an illusion. However, it was completely unaware of this. It tried endlessly until the end of time. Wasn't this a great sorrow? Chapter 1182. Dark clouds shrouded the sky, and fine snow drifted down. Li Qingshan shook his head. There was really nothing good to say about these devil transformations. The stubbornness of the ox demon, the frenzy of the tiger demon, and now the stupidity of the ape demon. Brother Nyo, oh Brother Nyo, what are you trying to tell me? With his previous cultivation experience, he knew that the spirit contained in a new kind of change was not something that could be comprehended overnight. So he stopped thinking hard. The road was under his feet, and he kept moving forward. He believed that one day he would understand what the moon in the water meant. Li Qingshan let out a long howl. The howl went on, stirring up the falling snow in the sky, but it was different from the overbearing ferocity of the tiger's howl. Ape howl. Everyone inside and outside the villa was shocked. They suddenly realized that they hadn't heard this ape howl for a long time. In the past, the white ape king liked to howl. If it weren't for the fact that the meaning of the howl was completely different, people would almost think that the white ape king's soul had been resurrected and was wandering around the villa. The white ape king's howl was always sharp and resounding, with a lonely arrogance that looked down on the world. This howl, on the other hand, was vast and distant, full of changes, full of wonder, but after listening for a long time, one couldn't help but feel sad. On top of the tower, Gu Yenying slammed her hand on the stone railing and looked in the direction of the howl. However, dark clouds covered the moon, and it was dark. Has this kid comprehended something again? Villa Lord. Fei Hong put down the fiery sword and listened attentively for a while. Could such a person also feel sad? The howl dissipated in the wind and snow. Li Qingshan's figure moved forward, waving his arms. His eyes were full of spirit and quickness, as if he had become a big ape, and he officially began to cultivate the ape-demon moon-reaching art. Galloping and leaping, there was no ferocious attack, and it was more like monkeys playing in the forest. Li Qingshan's heart was also full of joy, as if he had returned to his childhood. Even when he was alone, he didn't feel bored, and the world was full of life and strange things that never made him frown. This was the first time he had cultivated a method so happily, and the disappointment of reaching for the moon had long been thrown beyond the highest heavens. Of course, cultivating any method required the support of resources, and this world was definitely not willing to give him a single shred of spirit chi. However, he didn't need charity from anyone. He activated the divine talisman of great creation with all his might. It gave birth to extremely pure spiritual energy. As it circulated and melted in his body, his movements became more agile, and the sound of wind whistled through the air. At this moment, the benefits of this world were revealed. The invisible shackles had eliminated all interference. There was no need to consider the balance between gods and demons. Just dance to your heart's content, whether it was the ox demon, the tiger demon, the phoenix demon, or the spirit turtle. They could only watch helplessly as the little monkey jumped around, unable to affect it in the slightest. When the sky brightened, Li Qingshan stopped just now. His whole body was drenched in sweat, and his face was filled with excitement and joy. This demonic ape transformation was really fun. There was actually such a joyful cultivation technique in this world. However, almost half of the energy within the divine talisman of great creation had been consumed without him realizing it. This amount of power was enough for him to slay the White Ape King 200 times over, and he had only just begun cultivating the ape demon transformation. It was like using a knife to kill someone. All it took was a gentle stroke of the blade, but to forge a treasured knife that had been tempered 100 times, it had to be tempered 100 times. Thinking back to when he was in Jojo, drinking wine and eating meat were also considered cultivation, and he had consumed countless spirit ginseng and medicinal pills. It was as if he had an entire world supporting him. Now that he had left Jojo, he could only rely on himself. As the saying went, in this world, only one's mother is good. A child without a mother is like a blade of grass. However, at least he had found a path. As long as he could sell the legend of the White Ape King to the world, would he have to worry about not having enough power of will? Before leaving this world, he had to at least master the first tier of the ape demon transformation and master an innate magical ability. He suddenly felt that his body was a little strange. When he raised his arms, he realized that his arms had become much longer. His palms had also become longer, and a layer of fine hair had grown on them. He quickly touched his face, and his mouth seemed to be protruding a little. If this goes on, I'll really become a monkey. But at least I still look a little human. Li Qingshan's eyes swept across and saw the frozen pond. He leaped up, stretched out his long arms, and tore through the air with his fingers. With a clang, a piece of the iron-hard ice was torn off and crushed into powder. He raised his arm lightly again, and the scattered snow seemed to be sucked into his hand. He clenched it into a snowball, and with a forceful toss, it disappeared into the night sky. Gu Yenying was staring into the deep darkness when a white, that suddenly appeared in her field of vision. It quickly grew bigger, and before she could react, she was hit in the head by a ball of cold air. Snowflakes flew everywhere, and she was thrown off her feet. This bastard! Li Qingshan put his hands on his waist and laughed loudly. From this day onwards, there were some discussions in the villa. The villa master seemed to have gone mad. First, he changed the Ape Deity Villa's signboard to Ape Demon Villa. He even changed it himself. He wrote 2 extremely ugly words on a piece of white paper and stuck them on the signboard with his saliva. Yes, with his saliva. Fortunately, it was winter, so it quickly froze. Otherwise, it would have been blown away by the mountain wind. Those who saw the new signboard for the first time were dumbfounded, not knowing what expression to make. No one could understand why he changed the Ape Deity Villa to Ape Demon. Was he deliberately doing it the other way around? He also liked to climb and jump on the steep, cold rock walls, accompanied by strange ape howls and strange laughter. Sometimes he would suddenly jump from the edge of the cliff, giving people a fright. Some people said that it was because he had eaten the White Ape King's Yao core that he had become more and more like a monkey, but people would immediately refute that even the White Ape King did not look like a monkey. Moreover, his personality was becoming more and more temperamental. A few days ago, he suddenly gathered everyone for a banquet, but in the end, there were only fruits on everyone's table. Although fruits were very precious at this time of year, his table was filled with wine and meat. He ate and drank to his heart's content, as if to retaliate against everyone who said he looked like a monkey. At the banquet, a young swordsman grumbled in dissatisfaction. He immediately threw the wine cup made from the White Ape King's skull at the young man, smashing his head until it bled. Just when everyone thought he was going to fly into a rage and start a massacre, he laughed and gave the wine cup to the young man, saying that he had already bound it with blood. Everyone could still remember the expression on the young man's face at that time, but they could not describe it. They could not even imagine that a face could express fear, shame, surprise, and surprise at the same time. The young man was considering whether to beg for mercy, but suddenly felt grateful. In the end, he just stood there in a daze. Later, everyone became a little envious of him. He could get the White Ape King's skull just by smashing his head. A few swordsmen from rich and powerful families offered him a sky-high price, but he refused to sell it because he was also from a rich and powerful family. Gu Yenying also suffered greatly. When Li Qingshan mysteriously said that he wanted to show her something, then brought her under a wall. Through a small hole in the wall, she saw a picture of a group of women bathing. She wanted to strangle him. "Kid, I know you want to experience the nature of an ape, but you don't have to be so engrossed in training." Chapter 1183. Li Qingshan's eyes glowed. There were tens of thousands of small holes on the steep peak under his feet. They were all scratches left by his hands. He had been fooled by the will of heaven many times. Rocks collapsed in his hands, wind and snow attacked him from behind. He had to adapt to the situation. If he made a mistake, he would be smashed to pieces. However, he had never used the divine talisman of great creation or lost the smile on his face. He was very happy. It was not because of the demonic nature of the ape demon. It was because he was hysterically doing whatever he wanted. It reminded him of his original feelings. He remembered how unwilling he was when death came. He spent his short life in mediocrity. He remembered how happy he was when he was reborn. He swore that he would not let this life down. At that time, all he thought about was nothing more than living to his heart's content in 100 years of life. Unknowingly, what he possessed had already far exceeded what he had desired in the beginning. He had unimaginably great power and a long lifespan, so why was he afraid now? Success, failure, and emptiness were inevitable in the world. Were the gods and Buddhas really immortal? Who or what was not an illusion in the end? What harm was there in fishing for the moon? The will of heaven played tricks on people. Why care about the result? If the moon in the water was so moving, then try your best to fish for it. Gu Yenying seemed to understand. She was speechless for a moment. She patted his shoulder and said, "Thank you," listening to the sound of water coming from next door. She suddenly laughed. "If you don't think so much, it's really interesting." But she took out the rock feather and waved it gently. Crack! The stone wall moved up and down and collapsed. The water rippled violently, and the white bodies froze in the midst of the rising mist. "Only this way can I see clearly." Within a series of screams, Gu Yenying waved her fan and left. She slipped and suddenly fell backwards. Li Qingshan extended his arm and caught her by the waist. "This evil heaven is 100 times more stubborn than you." Gu Yenying gritted her teeth. During the time she spent in the tower, she had to be careful everywhere, almost forgetting about her bad luck. "Ha ha, I just happen to want to compete with it." Li Qingshan smiled. "All right, you've been wild for a while. Come back with me to write a novel." "Don't we already have one? I'll go take a walk in the front yard." Li Qingshan got a headache at the thought of sitting there and writing with a pen. It was more interesting to climb the steep cliff. "I don't care about your training, but you're so bored today that you brought me here to see this." It was obvious that he had reached a bottleneck. The power of wish in the divine talisman of great creation isn't enough. Gu Yenying grabbed his long arm. Her sharp eyes stared at him. "I really can't hide anything from you." Li Qingshan smiled. He had been climbing the cliffs for the past few days and had pushed the ape demon's strength to its limit. "That's good. Don't forget, you're a novelist." "I won't forget. Before next spring, we must make sufficient preparations." "Yes, definitely. Can you help me up now?" Gu Yenying lay in the crook of Li Qingshan's arm and engaged in this serious conversation. The background behind her was a mess of a bathtub. It was a very strange scene. The wind and clouds in the sky changed. Snowflakes fell and stopped, and the mountain wind howled endlessly. The winter in the north was especially long, but unknowingly, the icicles began to melt quietly, and crystal-clear water droplets fell. Boom! A bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, and the entire villa shook. Everyone in the villa felt as if the thunder had exploded in their ears. When they recovered from the shock, there were cries of surprise in the villa. Oh no, the tower was struck by lightning. The array was broken. The eye of the array must have been hit. How could it be so coincidental? Where are the two villa lords? They're still in the tower. Dark clouds hung low in the sky after the spring thunder. More lightning was brewing in the clouds, and all of them poured down on the high tower. The lightning twisted and spread on the stone walls. Could this be the ascension, heavenly tribulation? In the secret underground room of the high tower, Li Qingshan and Gu Yenying knew very well that this was not a heavenly tribulation, but just an ordinary thunderstorm. It just happened to happen in the sky above the villa, and they happened to be coming for them. The deafening roar echoed in the secret room. "You're lucky. Otherwise, if you were struck, no one could save you," Li Qingshan shouted at the top of his voice. Gu Yenying practiced on the rooftop almost every day without shelter from the wind and snow. Today, she didn't go up there. She took him to check the treasures in the secret room, so as to prepare to go out of the mountain and avoid this disaster. "It's not luck. I observe the clouds every day. If I didn't bring you here, you would have been struck to death outside." Gu Yenying also shouted. She liked flying since she was a child, so she knew all kinds of changes in the clouds. Thunderclouds were completely different from ordinary clouds. As soon as she saw the changes in the sky, she hurriedly took Li Qingshan here. This was the lowest, firmest, and safest place in the villa. Why didn't you say so earlier? Surprise. Gu Yening smiled slightly. Surprise my ass. Li Qingshan rolled his eyes, but Gu Yening's smile froze. She pointed behind him and shouted, "Be careful of the lightning." How could there be lightning here? He even closed the heavy stone door of the secret room. Li Qingshan thought she was joking, but when he looked back, a ball of lightning somehow passed through the stone door and moved silently. The air was filled with a strange stench. Damn it! Boom! The violent lightning filled the secret room. After a long time, the thunder clouds dispersed and the stone door opened. Li Qingshan and Gu Yening came out with their faces covered in dust. More than half of the tower above them had collapsed. Flames rose in the villa, and people were rushing back and forth, trying to put out the fire. But just now, when the lightning was raging, several people were struck to death, and no one dared to come out. Now, the fire had completely spread. Even the innate masters couldn't do anything. The mountain wind whistled, and the wind fueled the fire, turning the villa into a sea of fire. The lonely peak was like a burning torch, and the fire could be seen from hundreds of miles away. Oh no, my novel! Li Qingshan's expression changed. He had spent the whole winter writing up to the 5th volume of the grand biography of the White Ape King, and had his men copy tens of thousands of copies. Now with a fire, it was all over. Don't worry, I've ordered people to pack it up and bury it in the ground. The fire won't burn it, and the water won't drown it. Li Qingshan calmed down. Just now, he had to use the divine talisman of great creation to save his life, and it had consumed a lot of power of will. It was already very dangerous, and once it was used up, he could only fight with his bare hands and risk his life against the heavens. The two of them stood in the middle of the raging fire. A black pillar of smoke rose into the sky and circled above the mountain peak. It was like a black dragon baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, glaring at them maliciously. Gu Yening looked up at the sky. It seems that the heavens are urging us to go on our way. Li Qingshan said, Then let's go and make a scene. Let the world know the names of I, Li Qingshan, the descended tiger, and you, Gu Yening, the flying eagle. Can we not add these two nicknames? Chapter 1184. Smoke lingered in the air. The ape deity mountain villa, which was once famous in the north, was now in ruins. Fei Hong hurried through the ruined courtyard and arrived below the collapsed tower. All she saw was Li Qingshan sitting on the high steps. He was solemn and had a smile on his face. Gu Yening stood beside him, gazing into the distance. Her clothes ruffled as if she was about to be blown away by the wind. She was relieved. She could not see any disappointment on their faces, which made her admire them even more. Fei Hong, you're here. Li Qingshan greeted her as if it was any other day. Villa leader, it's good that you're okay. Many sisters were burned to death. Fei Hong sighed. She felt disgusted when she thought of the burnt bodies. Fei Hong smiled bitterly. If her martial arts had not improved recently, she would have been killed as well. Li Qingshan saw that her face was covered in smoke. He smiled. It seems that martial arts has its benefits. Yes, it's destroyed. It's all destroyed. Villa leader, what should we do now? Yuan Fei ran over crying. She wanted to be the caretaker of the villa for the rest of her life. Now, everything had turned into ashes. What's your name? Li Qingshan shouted and stood up slowly. His arms fell to his knees. He took a deep breath and roared at the sky. His roar resounded through the mountain peak. Everyone gathered. The swordsmen from the outer yard did not suffer any losses. Other than one unlucky guy who was killed by lightning, The others were all safe. More than 10 people from the inner yard died. However, most of them had internal energy and escaped. The night was dark and shadows flickered. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Li Qingshan stretched his arms and pointed to the sky. He asked loudly, "Do you know why this thunderstorm came?" Everyone was speechless. He patted his chest. "It came for me." At first, everyone thought that this thunderstorm had something to do with Li Qingshan and the others. However, when he said it himself, they felt that it was too arrogant. How could a mortal trigger such a heavenly power? "This damned heavens wants me dead." Do you know why? Li Qingshan's orange-yellow eyes looked around. Finally, someone couldn't help but ask, "Why?" "Because I'm going to do something great." "What is it?" "Who still remembers our slogan? Flying red. Say it." Everyone has something to learn, and everyone has something to practice. Yes, that's it. I'm going down the mountain now. Turn these words into reality. I want to spread my book to the whole world. Let everyone in the world. They can all practice the most powerful martial arts and ultimate arts. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, and their hearts were filled with shock. They hadn't expected that his words were actually sincere, and not a joke. This was even crazier than all the things he had done in the villa combined. However, no one dared to say anything due to his usual majesty. "Manor Lord, you absolutely can't do that. Are you going to become enemies with all the aristocratic families and sects in the world?" A swordsman tried to dissuade Li Qingshan. It was the youth who had been smashed in the head by Li Qingshan. "I remember that you are from an aristocratic family." Li Qingshan's face darkened. The youth was a little regretful, but he bit the bullet and said, "It's the Shiman family of the Western region. This is just my personal opinion, and it has nothing to do with the family." "Go on. This is the outskirts of civilization. No one cares what you want to do. Heights Lord. But if the grand biography of the White Ape King were to be spread all over the world, all sword sects and schools would perish. No, not just sword sects and schools. When that time comes, all the sects and aristocratic families in the world will gather together to attack you. I hope Manor Lord will think twice." The youth bowed deeply, and cold sweat gradually oozed from his forehead. The consequences were so serious that even he hadn't thought of it before he spoke. He only hoped that it would be a skull this time. The other swordsmen were even more shocked. They couldn't imagine what kind of scene it would be. There were only a few methods in the world that could be compared to the White Ape sword technique. If the explanation in the biography of the White Ape King was added, it would be unparalleled in the world. If it was really as Li Qingshan said, and the book was spread throughout the world, who would be willing to learn from a master? There wouldn't even be a master to speak of. Even a mountain villager could kill the disciples of famous sects and aristocratic families, as long as he had enough understanding and perseverance. There were many such stories in the world of martial arts. Young geniuses occasionally had a fortuitous encounter and suddenly rose like a comet, becoming the talk of people. But such things were rare in 100 years. These geniuses all had masters and eventually became masters themselves, or they founded their own sects or aristocratic families. If such things became the norm, the order of the world of martial arts would completely collapse, and the world would fall into unprecedented chaos. Well said. Li Qingshan waved his hand, and a cold light pierced through the air, shooting toward the youth. The youth's pupils shrank, and he didn't have time to draw his sword. He thought to himself, "My life is over." However, the cold light streaked across the air in an arc and stabbed right under his feet. "You've got some guts, kid, to dare to speak bluntly. The White Ape King's true steel sword is yours." Thank you, Manor Lord." The youth was surprised and happy, and the eyes of the crowd were filled with envy. But I want to be enemies with all the sects and aristocratic families in the world, Li Qingshan said proudly. In fact, Gu Yenying had already said this before, and she had said it more clearly. He borrowed the white ape sword method to spread the novel, and it was a shortcut that could quickly accumulate power of will, but he also had to pay a price for it. Martial arts flourished in this world, but the most important martial arts books were monopolized by thousands of sects and aristocratic families, big and small. Without a fortuitous encounter, a peasant boy could never win against a young master of an aristocratic family, even if he practiced for a lifetime. Even within the sects and aristocratic families, they were divided into different levels: the outer sect, the inner sect, and the direct branches, forming a stable system. The core was often a secret art or a few kinds of martial arts. Li Qingshan's actions were bound to challenge the world's thousands of years of order, coupled with his self-mockery. The result was self-evident. But why is he doing this? No one could understand why he would do something so strenuous and unrewarding. This is for justice. Looking at the world of martial arts, how many heroes and young heroes fight for fame and fortune, but how many good things have they done in their lives? The so-called heroes of the forest claim to rob the rich and help the poor, but how many rich and poor families can they rob? Not to mention that what these people do is like giving charity to beggars. They don't even see people as human beings. They are just tools for their own gratification. Now, I want to show the world what is the true way of chivalry, what is the true meaning of robbing the rich and helping the poor. I want to give all the weak the power to protect themselves. I want to give all the poor the opportunity to become peerless masters. I dream that one day there will be no sectarian bias, no distinction between the rich and the poor. All living things compete for freedom, and everyone can rely on their own strength to create a career. Let those who are born noble and high above be stunned. Aristocratic families and sects are nothing but clay chickens and pottery dogs. In the face of this rolling general trend, even the mysterious will of heaven can't stop it. Those who follow me will prosper, and those who oppose me will die. Today, I will go against heaven. Chapter 1185. At this moment, he seemed to have become the combination of God and devil, justice and evil, chivalry and tyranny, a warrior and a madman, all fused into one body. Under the brilliant morning sun, it seemed that even the heavens did not know whether to destroy it or to help it succeed. The timing is perfect. The corners of Gu Yenying's lips curled up slightly. He cleverly hid his true purpose, and then faked the reason why he was rejected by this world. She did not expect that this boy, who liked to be alone, would be so resourceful. However, he remembered that he had never been good at putting on a show. Yet, he was able to say such hot-blooded and passionate words. Even he himself was a little excited after hearing it. Could it be, she observed carefully, and saw that his eyes were blazing with determination. Even she couldn't find a trace of falsehood in them. Could it be that he was serious? He suddenly recalled a few months ago when she complained about the heavens being mischievous. He smiled and said, "I was just about to compete with it." The red sun gradually rose from the east. Everyone slowly recovered from their shock. They all had different expressions on their faces as they pondered in silence. He felt fear and shock, but also yearned for it. A middle-aged swordsman suddenly said, "Manor Lord is right. What's so great about clans and sects? Why are they born one level higher than others?" In order to enter the Ape Deity Mountain Villa to learn swordsmanship, he had spent close to 10 years collecting enough treasures to present to the White Ape King. However, he had already passed the optimal age to learn swordsmanship, and there was little hope for him to break through to the innate realm. Moreover, He had been looked down upon by swordsmen from aristocratic families and sects in this villa. He had long been suppressing a bellyful of vexation. However, Li Qingshan's white ape sword technique had given him hope of becoming a peerless master. I am also willing to follow the manor lord. Soon after, a few more swordsmen shouted. They were all from the wilderness. His strength was mediocre, and he hadn't even reached the Xiantian realm. Most importantly, it was obvious that only by continuing to follow Li Qingshan would he have the opportunity to continue comprehending the white ape sword technique. Although the grand biography of the White Ape King was very detailed, there were many parts that required reference to the original text in order to truly understand. However, most of the swordsmen were still hesitant. They were all from aristocratic families and sections. How could they turn their spears against their own people? Villa Lord, that young swordsman from the Shimen clan said. He gathered his courage and spoke again. Li Qingshan turned to look at him. HM? Shimeningxia is willing to follow the manor lord and achieve great things. Shimeningxia bowed deeply. Originally, he wanted to say something to object, but when that pair of orange eyes looked at him, he felt a chill run down his spine. His heart skipped a beat. His killing intent was aroused. He could not help but tighten his grip on the true steel sword. Some things could be done twice, but not thrice. If he continued to defy Meng Qi this time, he was afraid that not only would he fail to learn the white ape sword play, but his life would also be in danger. Thus, he quickly changed his tone and expressed his support. Oh, you are also from an aristocratic family. I thought you would oppose it, Li Qingshan said with a smile. He was prepared to kill him as a sacrifice. I am doing this in order to protect the Shimen clan. No matter how strong the Shimen clan is, how can we become the enemy of the entire world? Only by conforming to the general trend can we avoid a calamity. Even if the white ape sword law spreads throughout the world, I believe that the people of Shimen clan won't be weaker than others. With Shimeningxia as an example and a decent set of reasons, the other swordsmen also expressed their allegiance. The temptation of the white ape sword law was too great, and Li Qingshan's coercion was too strong. I am very pleased that everyone is sensible and sensible. If there is anyone else who has an objection, you may as well speak up now. If you don't speak up today, you won't have a chance in the future. Li Qingshan nodded slightly, but in his heart, he was very clear that these people's loyalty was worthless. Once he showed weakness, he would immediately bite back. But this was the interesting part. It was like climbing on a precipice. If there was no danger, what would be the point? The manor lord has great ambitions. Forgive me for my shallow strength, but I can't help the manor lord. I will take my leave now. A skinny old man wearing a Taoist robe faintly said. He had reached the Xiantian 7th stage, and his strength was second only to the two protectors. Moreover, he was the great elder of the mysterious Void Temple, one of the 7 biggest sects in the world. The mysterious Void Temple's lord was also his junior brother. In addition, he was already old. Even if he had the white ape sword law, it would be very difficult for his cultivation to advance to the next level. Naturally, he was unwilling to join Li Qingshan's pirate ship. He secretly made up his mind. As soon as he left the mountain, he would rush back to the mysterious Void Temple. Then, he would inform all the martial arts practitioners that such a devil had appeared in the north. If he couldn't eradicate him as soon as possible, then the martial arts world would inevitably face a great catastrophe, surpassing any previous one. This man named Li Qingshan was incomparable to any evil devil in the history of the martial arts world. In front of his frightening ambition, the Phantom Dancer Demon King and the 7 Slaughtering Demon King were simply as kind as children. He didn't do it for worldly things, but simply to cause chaos in the world. Could it be that the descent of the evil star would happen because of him? Good, very good. I like courageous people. Who else? Li Qingshan said with a smile. The other swordsmen seemed to have found their backbone. They also cupped their hands and bid farewell. There was even one who refuted Li Qingshan, saying that he was seeking his own destruction, and that it was better to stop while it was still early. Li Qingshan's smile became even wider. Unknowingly, a long winter had passed since he had killed the Flame Sword Marquis, Ho Hong Tao, with one palm. Since then, he had been quite peaceful and hadn't killed anyone. It seemed that he had been underestimated by some people. Where are the left and right protectors? Manor Lord, what orders do you have? The two protectors stepped forward. After a winter, their sword arts had improved a lot. In order to cross the tribulation and break through the void, they had already decided to follow Li Qingshan for a while. Kill them for me. Li Qingshan lightly waved his hand. The left and right protectors hesitated. If they attacked, they would form an irreconcilable blood feud with the mysterious Void Temple. Li Qingshan, do you want to kill us all? The skinny old man said angrily, I have already said that those who follow me will prosper, and those who oppose me will perish. Do you think I am joking? Protectors, what are you waiting for? If you don't want to take action, then let me do it myself. The left and right protectors felt a chill in their hearts. They simultaneously thought of the pile of ape corpses in front of the manor gate a few months ago. He was no longer the carefree and inexplicable master of the manor, but an overlord of the martial arts world. Between death and ascension, there was no hesitation. With a clang, he resolutely drew his sword. You are helping a tiger do evil. Ha! To think that you still remember my name, the Descended Tiger. Li Qingshan laughed loudly. Shut up. The Manor Lord's righteousness is not something an old man like you can understand. Now that you have realized your error and repent, I beg for the Manor Lord's forgiveness. Perhaps you still have a chance to live. The right protector shouted. Humph, this humble Taoist is not as greedy for life as you are. This matter cannot be concealed. The mysterious Void Temple will definitely avenge me. Come. In an instant, sword chi crisscrossed, and several heads fell to the ground. A moment later, only the old man was left. He was restrained by the two protectors and brought before Li Qingshan. He was still cursing and swearing. Manor Lord, why don't you keep him as a hostage and use him to threaten the mysterious Void Temple? Li Qingshan extended his arm and lifted the old man high into the air. Then he tossed him off the cliff. A long, miserable scream rang out, then suddenly stopped. Chapter 1186. Li Qingshan suddenly turned around, baring his fangs. His face was ferocious like an enraged ape. No matter how much he joked around, a demonic ape was still a demon, and he was born with a demonic nature. He widened his orange-yellow eyes and stared at the two Dharma protectors. You two pieces of trash. The protectors' expressions changed. They had been famous swordsmen for many years and had never been insulted like this. Li Qingshan sneered. What? You don't accept it. The way of the sword is the way of killing, but you don't even dare to kill. What are you if not trash? Are you going to capture every enemy you meet in the future and hand them over to me? Then what's the point of practicing? Go home and embroider. The protectors' faces alternated between green and red, but they didn't say a word. Which of them didn't have dozens of dead souls under their swords? How could they not dare to kill? I know that old guy has some status, so you're afraid. Not only are you trash, but you're also idiots. If you support me, then put aside all distracting thoughts and follow me. If you don't like me, and want to kill me and take the white ape sword technique, then you should kill that old guy to gain my trust. It's laughable that you're so hesitant. The Villa Master is right. We know we were wrong. We have no intention of betraying you. The protectors lowered their heads. From the moment the old man fell off the cliff, they had already become enemies with the Xuanxu Temple, so they might as well kill him and satisfy Li Qingshan. In any case, since he witnessed She's extraordinary and peerless sword Dao, it was absolutely impossible for him to give up. Now, he could only follow Shi to the end. Li Qingshan's anger immediately turned to joy. Nothing is better than being able to correct one's mistakes. At least I didn't misjudge you. Your hearts of the sword are not even embryonic swords and need to be tempered. Even the White Ape King can't do this. Now, follow me to fight for the world. This is a heaven-sent opportunity. Don't miss it. I won't miss it. All right, get ready to go down the mountain. Li Qingshan waved his hand and turned to Gu Yenying. You make the arrangements. Gu Yenying shrugged slightly and went up to give orders. In just a few sentences, she had already gathered all of them. He mobilized everyone. Some went off to gather wood and build sledges, others to dig granaries and berry pots to cook rice, and others to put out fires, collecting gold and silver that were not afraid of fire, and so on. Finally, he had the left and right guardians maintain order and supervise everyone. Arranging everything reasonably, neatly, and interlinked with each other would be the most efficient. She had served as the White Hawk commander in the Rui Commandery for many years, so a small matter like this obviously could not trouble her. But everyone was impressed by their strength and wisdom. Perhaps he could really accomplish something great. Li Qingshan stood with his arms crossed. He was happy to be free. Gu Yenying whispered, Qingshan, isn't this too intense? We could have planned it slowly. If he didn't have such an imposing manner, how could he have shaken the hearts of the people in the world? Revolution is not a dinner party. The heavens are watching what people do. Li Qingshan disagreed. With their bad luck, even if they wanted to plan it slowly, there would definitely be countless accidents. In the end, they would still have to become enemies with sects and aristocratic clans, and all they would end up with would be sneaky and be labeled as rascals. It was better for them to stand out openly, win over the hearts of the people, and fight to their heart's content against all their enemies with the might of the world. I think all you have is an imposing manner. I really don't know what you'll do without me, Gu Yenying said in exasperation. If they wanted to become enemies with the aristocratic clans and sects of the world, just Li Qingshan's fists were definitely not enough. They needed to establish a complete organization and borrow all the power they could to expand and develop like a rolling snowball. There were so many things that she definitely needed to sort through. She also needed to consider the unfathomable minds of people. This is exactly for you to gain experience. Li Qingshan patted her shoulder. If you want to turn from a Kuan to a Peng, you must first feel the turbulence of the undercurrents and fight against the violent winds and waves. Only then can you rise up. That does make some sense. Gu Yenying could not help but sink into thought, but she noticed that the smile on Li Qingshan's face was exactly the same as when he was playing a prank. She said in annoyance, I actually almost believed you. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. I'm very experienced in this aspect. Li Qingshan was not boasting. He cultivated the 9 transformations of the demonic and divine, and he wanted to constantly comprehend the spirit contained within each transformation. When he crossed space, he had a slight understanding of the Kuan Peng's spirit. It was a kind of vastness that allowed all rivers to flow into the sea, but it did not possess the forbearance and silence of the spirit turtle. Instead, it was filled with a spirited will. Even if it dove into the depths of the sea, It was for the sake of rising up. Even Haitian wanted to break free from the restraints. He liked this spirit very much, even feeling a little regretful. This was because the Kuan Pang did not appear in the remaining 3 transformations. All right, Gu Yening was not a coward. She only became cautious because she was powerless and had just gone through a lightning storm. Her fighting spirit had been roused by Li Qingshan. "I'll fight with you." Before she had even finished speaking, the Kuan Pang feather in her bosom flashed slightly, as if it was responding to her. "How about it? I was right, wasn't I?" Li Qingshan smiled. "I've been enlightened." Gu Yening bowed slightly. "Don't be so smug. Go get everything in the secret room down there." All right, all right." At the same time, a furious, emaciated old man clung tightly to a slanted pine tree halfway up the mountain. It was the elder of the profound void temple that Li Qingshan had tossed down the mountain. His aura had become even more powerful. As it turned out, the crisis of life and death had instead allowed him to break through his bottleneck and reach the 8th layer of the congenital realm. He had also opened his acupoints along the way. Then he encountered this pine tree, which was why he managed to keep his life. However, his injuries were not light, so he did not dare to act rashly. He planned to wait for nightfall before descending the mountain and returning to the profound void temple. "The heavens must be helping me, allowing me to slay the evil demon and take revenge. Li Qingshan, just you wait." The sun was high up in the sky. Everything was ready on the mountaintop. They were only waiting for Li Qingshan's order to set off. He raised his hand high and was about to announce the departure when he suddenly had a thought. He muttered to himself, "It seems that some people won't die if they fall off a cliff. Villa Master, that old man's acupoints have all been sealed. He's dead for sure." The right protector said, "That's not for sure." Li Qingshan walked to the edge of the cliff and looked carefully. Through the thick mist, he indeed found a figure halfway up the mountain. He smiled and said, "What did I say? I was soft-hearted and didn't kill him with my own hands." Then he looked left and right, lifted a huge rock, and threw it down. He missed once and threw again in high spirits. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. This is called soft-hearted. A moment later, a familiar scream rang out, but it was much shorter. Chapter 1187. Although the majestic gate of the villa had been scorched by smoke and fire, it still stood tall. Even the words "ape demon" that Li Qingshan had stuck on with his saliva were still there. Do you still remember that snowy night a few months ago? Of course, we remember Villa Master. Now that I think about it, it still feels like a dream. This statement was met with a wave of agreement. Not only did that night feel like a dream, but the experiences of the past few months also felt like a dream. Now, they were going to have an even crazier dream. To tell you the truth, that snowstorm was also aimed at me. But not only did the wretched heavens not do anything to me, I became stronger the more I fought. And with your help, what's there to worry about? Li Qingshan laughed heartily. Everyone laughed too. Half a day ago, when they heard similar words, they thought he was bragging, but now they couldn't help but believe it. They felt a kind of heroic spirit fighting with the heavens, and his body glowed with a strange charm and boldness. I guarantee that everyone here, as long as they can survive this great trial, will definitely be able to break through the void. Li Qingshan pointed at the crowd and made a shocking promise. After all, how many years would it take for a peerless master to be able to break through the void to appear in the martial arts world? It was obviously arrogant talk, but it had a powerful persuasive power. Seeing that everyone was stunned, he laughed again. "But as for whether or not we will be killed by the tribulation lightning, I can't guarantee. Even if we are killed by the tribulation lightning, it's better than living a mediocre life. Fei Hong raised her arms and shouted. If there was anyone in the villa who had the fastest improvement in martial arts, it would be her. In just a few months, she had gone from mediocre to top-notch. This was due to her perseverance, her ability to endure hardship, and her decent talent. Li Qingshan would even give her special treatment from time to time, giving her some pills from the White Ape King's secret room. She was the clearest example right now, which tempted everyone. I will not die before I am killed by the tribulation lightning. Shimin Ingjie gripped the true steel sword tightly. He couldn't help but feel a little excited, wishing he could meet an enemy right now. Let's fight. Okay, I'll watch you. But now that the villa has been destroyed, I am no longer the villa master. Then how should we address him? The Right Protector asked, was he really going to call it the Descending the Mountain Tiger? A Descending the Mountain Tiger that looked like an ape? Isn't this a little too much of a joke? I will be a hero and enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. It made all the so-called heroes throughout the ages blush with shame. He should be called the Hero King. Yes, Your Highness. Everyone answered loudly, their blood boiling. This was the title that their commander should have. Only one person was dissatisfied. It was Gu Yenying, who was standing beside Li Qingshan. Then I don't want to be called Flying Eagle either. Then what do you want to be called? Eagle King? King Kun? Or King Rock? None of them. I'll just call myself the number one in the world. Gu Yenying smiled in a carefree manner. What kind of world's number one are you? Li Qingshan was also dissatisfied, seeing the two villa masters arguing. Everyone could only remain silent. This was even more arrogant than the Hero King. Even among the peerless masters in history who could break through the void, no one dared to call themselves the world's number one. You can only call yourself the number two in the world, Li Qingshan said with certainty. Everyone was speechless, so they were just fighting for this ranking, but they were not surprised at all. I don't care. Gu Yenying raised her head and did not even look at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan's eyes widened like a cow's, but he could not do anything to her. Your Highness, please calm down. I think the 4 words number one in the world are true. Shimin Ingjie glanced at Gu Yenying and immediately looked away. No matter how many times he looked at her, he could not look at her directly. He had opposed Li Qingshan twice because he was jealous. Fei Hong sighed in her heart. If she was not the world's number one, who could be called the world's number one? Li Qingshan also understood and said with a smile, that makes sense. If you want to be number one in the world, then be it. I don't want to use this kind of title. Gu Yenying smiled. Since the villa is gone, we should rebuild a new gang, so that everyone knows their subordinates. I have already thought of the name. It will be called World Society. World Alliance. The whole world is united. Good name. The villa has the intention to defend, but the World Society has the ambition to conquer the world. The left and right protectors exclaimed in admiration. They could also see that in the future, many specific matters would probably be handled by this number one beauty in the world. Wait, it sounds like you are the leader of the World Society, Li Qingshan said. That's right, I am the leader. Gu Yenying grinned. Since her Kun Peng's heart was aroused, she was not willing to hide behind Li Qingshan and be a subordinate who gave advice and suggestions. What about me? Li Qingshan pointed at his own nose. You are the king of chivalry. Of course, if you want, you can be the deputy leader. Gu Yenying nodded. Brat, I have been the deputy villa master for so long, it should be my turn now. Li Qingshan's eyes widened like copper bells. This is not fair. How big is the villa? Gu Yenying tilted her head to indicate that there were fewer people here than in the original villa. as, for how many people can be developed, isn't it all up to me? It's very fair. In the end, Li Qingshan let out a long sigh. Forget it, it's all an empty title. I won't fight with you. Then, Gu Yenying took a step forward and ordered someone to get a pen and paper to record. In a short while, she dictated 18 rules of the society. They were concise and strict, with clear rewards and punishments. Not only did they maintain authority, but they also pointed out the direction of development. They were better than the family rules of any aristocratic family or sect in the world. When it came to making laws, who could compare to the legalists? Everyone, please remember these 18 rules. If you violate them, you will be tortured in hell. Gu Yenying's expression became solemn and awe-inspiring. Her cloak fluttered, and hot wind surged. In an instant, the beautiful woman turned into a judge of hell. Everyone felt a great sense of majesty and terror. This world leader, who had never shown any power and looked even weaker than ordinary people, had such majesty. Li Qingshan's respect for her was not just because of her charm as the #1 in the world. They all said, "Your subordinate obeys." Li Qingshan looked back and felt that there was no real power in it. She only borrowed a trace of the breath of hot wind hell, but it was enough to scare these guys. It seemed that she did not waste this winter. Under the bright sun, a group of people meandered down the mountain. Water slowly dripped from the plaque. The 2 words, ape demon, were lifted by the mountain wind and gently torn off, fluttering with the wind. They landed at the foot of the mountain. There was a person lying in the thick snow. It was the elder of the Xuanxu temple. Beside him was a broken pine tree and a cracked boulder. His face was covered in blood, but his chest was slowly rising and falling. Chapter 1188. Although the boulder Li Qingshan threw broke the pine tree, it didn't directly hit him. The thick snow that had accumulated for an entire winter saved his life. He just happened to fall into a snow pit. The purple cloud secret art of the mysterious void temple gave him a chance to live. It could be said that he was extremely lucky. However, he felt the will of heaven and thought to himself, "The heavens are helping me. If I can kill this thief, I will be blessed by the heavens. Perhaps it won't be difficult for me to break through the void. No, this is the truth. I just need to spread it. Damn you, you still won't die like this." A familiar scolding suddenly resounded through the clear sky. Li Qingshan's face appeared above the snow pit, blocking the bright blue sky. His expression was angry, as if he was the one who was thrown down the mountain. His eyes widened. Before he could react, his legs were pulled out of the snow pit. After a moment of dizziness, the rock wall rushed toward him. "No, Pa!" His brain burst and blood splattered. "Pa, pa, 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 pa." A moment later, Li Qingshan threw down his legs in satisfaction. "It really is if he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. I can't be careless. Let's see how you'll survive this time." The rock wall and the snow were covered in thick ink. The bloody mess naturally didn't have the ability to answer him. The will of the heavens is so clear, so it might not necessarily be a bad thing. We just have to consider the worst-case scenario for everything. It'll make it easier to make plans. Gu Yenying's voice rang out, but it came from a huge basket on Li Qingshan's back. "#1 in the world. How does it feel inside?" Li Qingshan turned his head and asked, "It's very comfortable. It would be better if you could walk more steadily." Gu Yenying smiled and stuck her head out like a little monkey lying on the back of a big monkey. This basket was personally designed by her. It was covered with thick fur, and 4 tough ropes crisscrossed in front of Li Qingshan's chest, tightly binding the 2 of them together. Because the mountain road was steep and there were a lot of treasures, Li Qingshan couldn't wait any longer. She suggested that they come back to the foot of the mountain to take a look, and sure enough, they found something. I want to play it safe. Do you know how many traps there are under the snow? Li Qingshan flew away. The snow under his feet flew up. His bare feet dug deep into the ground, and with every step he took, a trace of power surged up from the soles of his feet. He borrowed this force to move forward, walking like the wind. It was also incomparably stable. When they arrived at the other side of the mountain, it was almost dusk. Bonfires were lit. When the crowd saw the two of them return, they bowed to them. "Your Highness, President." Li Qingshan said a few more encouraging words. Arriving at the central tent, he put down the basket on his back and asked, "Where are we going?" Gu Yenying crawled out of the basket and stretched her body. If the people outside heard this, they would probably explode right now. The great king of chivalry doesn't even know where to go. "Humph, I'm not the president. What's the point of thinking about this?" Li Qingshan sat down and picked up the wine on the table. He took a sip and spat it out. He said vaguely, "There's poison in the wine." A pungent smoke rose from the ground, showing the intensity of the poison. He still looked indifferent, but Gu Yenying was more dissatisfied that he didn't become the president. "That's true." Gu Yenying smiled slightly, which made Li Qingshan's teeth itch. Gu Yenying took out a sheepskin map and spread it on the table. "There are thousands of miles to the south from here, which is ruled by the Ma family, one of the 4 great families in the world. It has been passed down for 200 years. Their descendants control every piece of land and every mine. It is said that every leaf has the surname Ma. The head of the family, Ma Xingkong, is at the 9th level of Qi training. There are countless masters under him. I originally wanted to negotiate with him in the Galloping Horse City. There are many literate people there, and it is convenient to spread your novel." Li Qingshan slammed the table. "Screw you. This is not Great Xia, and you are not the daughter of the eagle deity. You are a right-leaning capitulationist. Compromise will not help us win the revolution, and it will not help us unite our comrades. You really have a lot of weird things to say. But you're right. I've been taking things for granted. Once I try to play according to the rules of this world, we'll become riddled with openings and be restrained everywhere. It's better to strike first and catch them off guard, which is why my first target is here." Gu Yenying pointed at a point on the map. "The mine and a large number of miners. I believe they will like your idea." Gu Yenying's eyes were bright and shining. "You finally understand what I mean." Li Qingshan nodded slightly. "This world is fundamentally different from our world." The next morning, it snowed lightly again. Li Qingshan carried Gu Yenying on his back and led the group to the south. The journey was full of twists and turns. In just a few days, they had encountered 2 avalanches. If it were not for Li Qingshan's sharp senses for danger, and if it were not for Gu Yenying constantly observing the terrain and making the worst-case scenarios, any one of these avalanches would have been enough to completely bury their newly established society of the world. Everyone realized that disaster was shrouding them, and their morale was extremely low. Fortunately, Li Qingshan had already described this as a journey against the natural order. Otherwise, the group would have collapsed. Everyone was afraid of the unknown. Even so, on the night of the first avalanche, a few people took advantage of the night to escape. They were all chased by the left and right protectors and were beheaded. Only then did the trend stop. On the 5th evening, the group arrived at their destination. It was surrounded by mountains and surrounded by a huge mine with a radius of 10 miles. There were rows of houses in the mine, just like a small city. Countless miners went in and out of the mine like ants. They used all kinds of simple and crude machines to dig the ores out of the mountains. Then, they took the coal from the ground and cast it into all kinds of weapons. Finally, they branded it with the Pegasus mark and transported it out of the mine by the river. Li Qingshan looked at the Pegasus flag fluttering in the wind above the mine and said to Gu Yening, "We also want to make some flags." He turned his head and gestured to the left and right protectors. "Go and take this down. Don't kill anyone. I will hold a public hearing tonight." No one knew what was going to happen in the public hearing, but for the swordsmen, it was a very simple task to take over such a mine, and they almost didn't encounter any decent resistance, especially for the left and right protectors. No one was a match for them. After all, no matter how strong the influence of Ma family was, it was impossible for them to send a master of Xiantian Ninth Stage to guard this mine, and any protector could easily dismantle the rule of Ma family here. Did you notice that the spiritual energy here is obviously so weak, but their strength is not any weaker than the Qi practitioners of the 9 regions? In fact, they are even stronger. Li Qingshan said, "It seems that this is the difference between the big and small worlds. It is like the difference between the soil and the water. The water is more likely to have ripples, but fortunately, if the ripples are stronger, it will be difficult." Gu Yening said, "The fundamental difference between this world and the 9 regions was that the strength of an individual had not completely surpassed that of a group. If it was in the 9 regions, all the mortals combined would not be able to hurt a hair of Li Qingshan. But in this world, there was another possibility." Chapter 1189. Clang, 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 clang. The bell tower rang rapidly, and the ashen-faced miners looked up. This was the ringing of the summoning bell, which had not rung for a long time. A wooden platform had been built in the central square of the town. It was a place where large-scale gatherings were held. During festivals, people could even come here to listen to a big show. At this moment, the platform was brightly lit. A row of people knelt on the platform with their hands tied behind their backs. Around them were a group of silent swordsmen, their shadows flickering in the firelight, exuding a murderous aura. "You're from the Ape Deity Mountain Villa. Why did you attack us? Did the White Ape King order you to do this?" A luxuriously dressed man raised his head and asked in surprise. A moment ago, he was comfortably enjoying the banquet in his courtyard, but now he had become a prisoner. His cultivation of Xiantian Second Stage was enough to rule this mine, but how could he fight against more than 10 Xiantian masters? He was very familiar with the names of several of them. Even if they had come to the Galloping Horse City, they would still be guests. So, how could they suddenly attack him? "It's not the White Ape King, it's me." A voice came from the darkness, and the man looked back in surprise. 2 orange-yellow dots flashed in the darkness, leaping onto the platform. The swordsmen bowed their heads. "Your Highness." The man's eyes widened. It was not the White Ape King, but a burly man with long arms that reached his knees. He could not tell his specific cultivation level. The man squatted down in front of him, tilted his head, and asked, "You're the boss here?" Who are you?" Li Qingshan stood up and asked the crowd, "Do you know who I am?" No one dared to answer. They were just the lowest miners. Even a small foreman could whip them at will. And now the unreachable mine owner Ma was kneeling there obediently. "I'm Li Qingshan." Li Qingshan's voice was not particularly loud, but it reached everyone's ears clearly. With every word he said, and every wave of his hand, the surroundings gradually boiled over. Several thousand pairs of eyes stared at the platform. Under the illumination of the firelight, the man with an unusual appearance seemed to radiate with a wondrous charm. He pointed out a path to heaven, just as Gu Yening said. These people liked his idea far more than the swordsmen. In Li Qingshan's words, those with vested interests were far less revolutionary than the oppressed classes. Therefore, we must arouse the masses and rely on them, from the crowd to the crowd. The miners were physically strong. However, most of them only had the most superficial inner force. When the mine collapsed, it was not enough to keep them alive. Every day, they lived on the edge of death. In this world where martial arts prevailed, death was not something to be afraid of. Moreover, the white ape sword technique was something that even the top experts in the Jianghu were willing to risk their lives to obtain. In the end, the voices were like ocean waves, surging over wave after wave. On the high platform, other than Li Qingshan, everyone's complexion changed. This was the first time in their lives that they had felt such prestige. King, marquis, general, and minister, do you have guts? Li Qingshan opened his arms wide. Hero king, hero king, hero king. The miners raised their arms and shouted. Li Qingshan grabbed mine, Master Ma, and threw him into the crowd. Now, I'll hand him over to you. The crowd dispersed. This was the prestige that the Ma family had established for 200 years. Mine Master Ma was frightened. How dare you? The Galloping Horse City will never let go of any traitor. The miners were immediately enraged. When did you ever let us go? I was just too hungry, so I hunted a deer in the forest and was sent here. My poor parents had no one to serve them, so they starved to death. I didn't do anything at all. I just said something wrong and offended someone with the surname Ma. Instead of working here until I die, I might as well fight. Fight. The crowd drowned my Master Ma like an undercurrent. His shrill screams rushed out of the undercurrent and pierced through the night sky. The swordsmen were horrified that an innate master had died like this. Li Qingshan laughed. He grabbed another man and threw him into the crowd. The man screamed in midair and was torn apart in the blink of an eye. Screams were heard one after another. Flowers of flesh and blood bloomed one after another. The atmosphere in the field reached its peak, almost fanatical. Those who were tied up were trembling and begging for mercy. Li Qingshan did not spare anyone. He was like the devil king of hell, using living people to feed a group of ghosts. But he was also like the incarnation of justice, breaking the shackles and revolutionizing the world. The sky was bright, but the bloodstains were still visible. There were more than a dozen blacksmith furnaces in the square. Thousands of miners were lined up in a long line. The smell of meat permeated the air with a sizzling sound. Dozens of people took turns to stamp a red-hot soldering iron on the chest of each miner and print the word world. This was the proof of membership. Then they could receive a page of the white ape sword play. Those who had not received their turn were impatient, while those who had received the swordplay were overjoyed. This was a peerless swordplay. Even if there was only one page, it was enough for a person to reach the sky in a single bound and become a first-class master. From today onwards, they didn't have to mine anymore and could practice openly. Moreover, they wouldn't be practicing by themselves. It was said that they would be personally guided by the World Society leader. This was something that everyone dreamed of. Many of them were illiterate and could not understand the swordplay at all. Not everyone had the ability to learn without a teacher. In a large open space outside the town, everyone was holding a standard iron sword. They lined up neatly and waved their swords one by one. The atmosphere was extremely lively. A swordsman was in charge of practicing, while the other swordsmen were shuttling through the crowd to guide them. In their eyes, these miners were extremely clumsy. They used swords like hoes. Not many of them were attractive, and most of them had missed the best age to practice martial arts. If it were not for the two figures on the hillside, not far away, they would have started to slack off. However, There were also people with insight who thought, this is just the beginning. Among so many people, there are bound to be a few talented people. Even if these people can't become experts, their descendants will have a chance. Qingshan, how is it? On the hillside, Gu Yanning turned around and asked. She was wearing a silver eagle mask, which was made by the best swordsmith in the city overnight. It was used to cover her face, which was the world's #1, so that it would be convenient for her to act. This is a very good move. The miners are very disciplined and obedient. Li Qingshan nodded approvingly. Last night, Gu Yanning had not been idle. She had drawn a lot of armor and crossbow drawings and ordered the craftsmen to build according to the drawings. The design of the crossbow was exquisite and practical, and even the most experienced craftsmen were amazed. But the problem was with the simple craftsmanship of the armor. Armor was not popular in this world. In Jianghu, it would only be a burden. Not only was it extremely inconvenient to move, but its defense was also very limited. Any master of the internal style could crack the internal organs with one palm. Chapter 1190. After a day, Gu Yanning selected nearly 100 sergeants and 10 sergeants and ordered them to be punished. If one person makes a mistake, the whole unit will be punished. She also beheaded a few people to enforce the strict military law. It can be said that it was a harsh punishment, but it changed the atmosphere. It faintly looked like the army. Everyone knew the majesty of the first in the world. In the evening, she ordered everyone to change their residence and turn the town into a military camp. She also implemented a curfew. She ordered the swordsmen to patrol and kill anyone who violates the curfew. The sky had just darkened, and the city was already pitch black. Only a large estate halfway up the mountain still had its lights on. Li Qingshan leaned against the railings of the estate and gazed into the distance. Isn't this a little too harsh? You can control people's hearts with kindness and power. You are a chivalrous prince, so I can be the bad guy, and I can't win people's hearts like you. I have to rely on the law to quickly form an army. Gu Yanning was concentrating on drawing a picture of a crossbow. Hey, I am the spiritual leader. I should also command the army, but seeing that you are pitiful, I will give you some benefits. Thank you, Prince, for your great kindness. I think you are the one who finds it troublesome, Gu Yanning said without raising her head. When the army is formed, you don't need to be tied to me anymore. You can do whatever you want. Hey, I can't wait. Li Qingshan looked back and saw that she was still wearing the silver eagle mask. He walked over and helped her take it off. You don't need to wear this thing here. Gu Yanning just finished the last stroke. She breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, From now on, only you can see my face. Li Qingshan said with a smile, If you see this kind of face, don't you want to marry me? Just look, don't be discontented. Yuan Feifei's voice sounded outside the door. Prince, leader, Feifei is here. Come in. Yuan Feifei pushed the door and came in. She bowed and smiled. Prince, why did you summon me? Is the food not to your taste? I want to know why you are dissatisfied with me. Gu Yanning did not look at Yuan Feifei as she gently blew the ink on the paper dry. What? Was there poison in the food? Leader, I'm innocent. How could this servant dare to do such a thing? Yuan Feifei cried out. You know very well that I'm not talking about today. It's not in the food, Gu Yanning said. Then this servant doesn't know. I am loyal and devoted to the president and his highness. I hope that the two of you can see through the minutest details. Yuan Feifei knelt on the ground with a face full of emotion. Oh, she was the one who poisoned the wine. Li Qingshan recalled. At that time, they had just left the mountain. I don't want to affect morale. He didn't do much research. After all, I've been a White Eagle commander for so many years. This is obvious. Then kill him. Li Qingshan's attitude was as casual as when he drank the poison wine. Huh, no wonder you would show your face. Anyone who sees it will die. It's just a joke. Did you take it seriously? Yuan Feifei's face became paler and paler. She trembled more and more. Suddenly, she kowtowed. This servant was confused for a moment. Please spare my life, Manor Lord. If there's a first time, there'll be a second time. Make your move. Don't even think about escaping. You can't escape the pursuit of the left and right protectors. Only by killing me will you have a chance to live. As soon as Li Qingshan finished speaking, the sword light came straight for her throat. Yuan Feifei's face was ferocious. Die! What kind of bullshit swordsmanship is this? Li Qingshan didn't think much of it. When he said the word dog, his large hand had already grabbed Yuan Feifei's neck. The sword light stopped in front of Li Qingshan and couldn't move any further. Spare me. With a crack, Li Qingshan released his hand. The corpse fell to the ground. He was still curious as to why she poisoned him. However, a woman's heart was unfathomable. There was no need to ask so much. Your strength is recovering very slowly. Don't let me surpass you. Gu Yenying smiled. Although Li Qingshan had killed Yuan Feifei with one move, as if he was crushing a bug, his true strength was similar to Yuan Feifei's. He might even be slightly weaker. It was just that the gap between the two of them in other aspects was too big. I'll be able to obtain new strength soon. Li Qingshan's face was full of confidence. When he entered the mansion, he had sensed that there was a treasure hidden underneath. That night, Fei Hong took over the position of the chief supervisor of internal affairs. Crack, crack. The ice river that led to the outside of the mountain gradually melted. The chilly spring wind also became warmer. The grass stubbornly sprouted from under the snow, signaling the arrival of spring. In the mines, the sounds of battle rose to the sky. The miners trained day and night and were gradually becoming soldiers. The killing intent was getting stronger and stronger. Gu Yenying had set up checkpoints on the major roads to block the news. However, once the ice river was completely thawed, they would have to transport the weapons and ores that had been accumulated over the winter down the river. Then they would have to transport back rations and new miners. This way, the news would not be able to be blocked. The Ma family's counterattack would come soon. Everyone knew this, and so they endured the harsher training than mining. However, it was not that there was no entertainment. Instead of gathering together to watch a play, they listened to Li Qingshan's lecture on the legend of the White Ape King. He personally went on stage every day and explained the complicated and profound sword techniques in the sword manual in simple terms. At the same time, he promoted his own philosophy. Why do we fight? Who are our enemies? The inevitable victory of the revolution. This is a path that defies the heavens. Every time there was an uproar, not only was the will of the people united, but it also quietly dissolved the dissatisfaction under the harsh military law to prevent the string from being pulled too tight. Every day, a large amount of willpower was gathered into the divine talisman of great creation. It was 10 times faster than when they were in the villa. Now that they were out of danger, Li Qingshan was eager to attack. Once the ice river thawed, it would be the time to attack. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Like thunder in spring, the sound spread to every corner of the mine. The ice river began to thaw. In the open space outside the city, thousands of soldiers lined up in formation. Everyone was wearing armor and holding weapons. Everything was silent. They already had the embryonic form of an army. A platform was built in the center of the open space to pay respects to the general. Amidst the sound of the ice river breaking, Gu Yenying, dressed in silver armor, walked up the platform step by step. The clanking sound of armor rubbing against each other faintly merged with the sound of the ice river breaking. A pair of sharp eagle eyes swept across the audience, and the cruel aura of hell arose spontaneously. Everyone couldn't help but hold their breath. No one could have imagined that the 4 words, "World's number one," would be referring to her appearance. At this moment, a strong figure suddenly emerged from the crowd. As if riding on the wind, he leaped onto the platform in a few steps. The crowd immediately burst into cheers, forgetting Her Majesty in an instant. They shouted, "King of Chivalry!" The person who came was Li Qingshan. He held a flagpole in his hand and waved it forcefully. It was erected on the platform. The big flag fluttered in the wind. It was an eagle head that was somewhat similar to her mask. Everyone's eyes were attracted by the big flag. The military flag was the soul of the army. Li Qingshan cupped his hands at her. "General." The 8 captains who were selected from the army's martial arts practice came forward. They knelt on one knee and cupped their fists. "General." The whole army said in unison, "General." In an instant, a majestic aura gathered on her body. It turned into a substantial force that filled her entire body. This was a method used by the militarists to gather the military's aura. It was similar to the divine talisman of great creation in that it used human strength to resist the power of heaven. Gu Yenying could not help but feel a little excited. With a clang, she pulled out her sword. Chapter 1191. There were nervous and busy figures everywhere in the city. They gathered at the estuary and made the final preparations for the dispatch of troops. At the same time, in a mansion in the middle of the mountain, an old miner with a wrinkled face said respectfully to Li Qingshan, "Your Highness, the tunnel has been dug for more than 500 feet, but it's all rocks. I haven't found any mineral veins." In the end, he even looked a little ashamed, as if it was his fault that he didn't find the mineral veins. As soon as Li Qingshan settled down here, he gathered a group of old miners who were unsuited for the army and made them dig a mine in the manor. For this, he even demolished a luxurious manor and destroyed a garden, but in the end, he found nothing. He did not even find a single piece of metal. "Don't worry, I'm not looking for any mineral veins. In other words, there should be a mineral vein here." Li Qingshan smiled and patted the old miner's shoulder. With his sense of the earth, he found it as soon as he arrived here. The mansion that was demolished was the mine owner's practice room, which confirmed his feeling. Yes, the old miner showed a puzzled look. It was strange that there were mineral veins that he had never seen before, but he was also a little flattered. The person in front of him was different from any big shot he had seen before. He was full of sincerity. Li Qingshan looked down. The deep mine went straight into the belly of the mountain, exuding a cold air. "How's the reinforcement?" "Your Highness, don't worry. It definitely won't collapse. The mineral veins in this mountain are thin, and there are no mines in the first place. That's why Ma dared to build the mansion here. If it weren't for the fact that time is too tight, we could have made some steps. That's not necessary. I'm not that valuable. You've done a good job. When I come out, you'll be rewarded." Li Qingshan looked around as if he was waiting for someone. With a clanging sound, Gu Yenying rushed over with 100 armored soldiers. Her steps were as light as the wind, and she was finally no longer trapped by fate. She could move freely as she wished. The two looked at each other and nodded. Li Qingshan entered the deep mine and came to the end in an instant, just as he said. This place was expanded into a small stone room, and the temperature was a little warmer. The rock under his feet was filled with spiritual energy, like flowing water. Li Qingshan smiled. Yes, there should have been a spirit stone vein here, but because the spirit energy in this world was too thin, spirit stones couldn't be formed. However, it was still a spirit land. Although he was unable to obtain spiritual energy from the air, he could obtain nourishment from the earth. When he tried to absorb the power of the earth like he usually did, the spiritual energy in the rocks also flowed into his body, bringing with it traces of coolness as it flowed throughout his body and merged with his physique. The quality of the spiritual energy here was far from being comparable to that of the 9 provinces. But to him, it was like a well in the desert. It was much more precious than a river or a lake. In order to drink this mouthful of water, he also took a great risk. An earthquake could bury him. Even if the heavens couldn't make such a big move on a stable piece of land, they still had to guard against it. Destruction was always much easier than construction. But now, he could finally relax a little because she was guarding outside. What do you want to do? Gu Yeniying's dignified voice came from under the visor, and a pair of eagle eyes stared at the surroundings. There were more than 10 swordsmen, almost 1/3 of the total number. The 3 people in the lead had all reached the innate realm. At this moment, they were holding long swords and approaching step by step, their eyes filled with hostility. We want to eliminate a great evil for the pugilistic world, to prevent the world from being plunged into misery and suffering. The swordsmen all had awe-inspiring looks on their faces. Just as Li Qingshan had said, many of these people came from the reactionary class. Many people didn't really agree with his ideals, and they would even ruin things at the critical moment. "Oh, what is the great evil you are talking about?" Gu Yenying said. "Li Qingshan, that big devil, bullshit, traitor." Before Gu Yenying could say anything, the armored soldiers were already furious. Li Qingshan was their great hero, and they couldn't allow others to insult him like this. Gu Yenying raised her hand to appease the armored soldiers. "Ha! I thought I had a share." "Yes, you have a share too. However, in consideration of the fact that you're just a weak woman being held hostage by Li Qingshan, as long as you surrender obediently, we obviously won't harm you at all. No one would ever forget the supreme beauty beneath the silver hawk's visor." Gu Yenying laughed and said, "No wonder you are so bold. It turns out that you are only here to bully a weak woman. When the so-called big devil is here, no one dares to jump out." A smear of shame flashed across the swordsmen's faces. Indeed, if Li Qingshan were present, they would not even be bold enough to say no. This was the first time in their lives that they had experienced what it meant to be arrogant. They could not even muster the will to resist. It was precisely because Gu Yenying had never shown any kung fu, and her performance was even weaker than ordinary people. When she left the mountain, she had to be carried by Li Qingshan. That was why she dared to attack at this time. A real man doesn't care about trifles. As long as we can eliminate evil for the pugilistic world, we won't care about such trifles. Don't you want to learn the white ape swordsmanship? Gu Yenying looked playful. Of course, we can find it from his body. Although it will be a little troublesome to dig it out from the ground, there is no shortage of these lowly miners here. Except for the left and right protectors who were obsessed with swordsmanship and could really understand the mystery of Li Qingshan's swordsmanship, the others only coveted the white ape swordsmanship. Coming to this mine from the holy land of swordsmanship, they were accompanied by dirty and vulgar miners every day. This filled their hearts with resentment. There was another uproar among the armored soldiers. All of them were born lowly miners. After these days of encouragement from Li Qingshan, they were no longer used to being looked down upon like this. Gu Yenying laughed and said, "It doesn't have to be so troublesome. The white ape swordsmanship is with me." That couldn't be better. Everyone, don't fall into her delaying tactics. Let's hurry up and capture her first. Then we'll bury Li Qingshan alive. While talking, the swordsman quickly closed the distance between them. Their eyes involuntarily looked at the mine, fearing that Li Qingshan would suddenly come out to kill them. Well, I was just worried that there would be no one to sacrifice for the flag. Gu Yenying waved her hand, and the armored soldiers raised their iron swords. Humph, this bunch of trash wants to stop us. However, Gu Yenying's calmness was somewhat beyond the expectations of the swordsman. Someone shouted, "Give up! Do you really think that you're the number one in the world? The others have been arranged to go to the mouth of the river. No one can come to the rescue. Once Li Qingshan dies, there will be no more world gathering." Gu Yenying's reply was a cold shout, "Kill! Kill!" The armored soldiers shouted in unison and waved their swords to slash at the swordsman. 3 figures leaped above the crowd. They were 3 great swordsmen who had reached the post-celestial realm. Their sword chi whistled as they went straight for Gu Yenying. This was why there was no army in this world. Even if the weak had an army of 100,000, they would not be able to defend against the assassinations of experts. They would also not be able to defend against assassinations from experts. Experts would rather use the energy and martial strength of the army to make themselves stronger. "I sent the others away to distinguish you all," Gu Yenying said to herself. With a swish, she opened her iron fan and lightly waved it. The 3 great swordsmen froze. They were filled with pain and terror. As soon as they fell to the ground, they were chopped into meat paste by the armored soldiers. What kind of demonic art is this? The other swordsmen were all dumbfounded. They were even more shocked than when they saw Li Qingshan kill Marquis, raging fire with one palm. They clearly didn't see any attack, but the 3 great swordsmen died on the spot. For a moment, they all forgot to attack and retreated step by step under the pressure of the armored soldiers. The hellish hot wind was invisible and formless. After Gu, Yenying went up to the stage and paid her respects. Her strength quickly recovered, but it was only at the post-celestial realm. It was far from being a match for these swordsmen. However, she could borrow this power to pass through the confinement of this world and communicate with the hellish hot wind. Of course, these few gusts of hot wind were not enough to cause fatal injuries. It was like being bitten by a snake. The wound was not even worth mentioning. What was truly fatal was the poison contained within the hellish pain. It's fine if Li Qingshan says, "I'm not number one in the world, but you bunch of trash dare to point fingers at me?" Gu Yenying stepped out from the crowd and stepped forward. Her silver eagle mask emitted a cruel and imposing aura. The armored soldiers automatically separated to 2 sides, their hearts filled with shock. Originally, they didn't quite approve of this mysterious and cruel leader, but now they were completely convinced. How could this kind of power be a match for mortals? Seeing her approach step by step, a swordsman who was confident in his qinggong jumped onto the roof. With a leap, he landed on the roof. Gu Yenying waved her fan without even looking, and he fell heavily from the roof. His face was distorted from the pain. The remaining swordsmen were so scared that their stomachs were spinning. They didn't even have the courage to escape. One of the swordsmen knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly. "Leader, please spare my life. I was just confused for a moment. I won't dare to do it again. I believe that you were just confused for a moment." Gu Yenying said calmly, "If it wasn't for the influence of heaven's will, these people might not have ended up like this." Just when the swordsman had a glimmer of hope, "But military law is merciless." Her voice suddenly changed from warm spring to cold winter. It was as if she was a completely different person. "Kill." Li Qingshan walked out of the cave with satisfaction. The spiritual energy contained in this land had been completely absorbed by him. His ape demon transformation had also reached a higher level. He was now looking forward to his first ape demon divine art. What greeted him was a wave of cheers. Li Qingshan looked around and saw that many of the soldiers had bloodstains on them. So they really came? Thank you, Gu Yenying said sincerely. He could have personally taken control of the army and monopolized this power. Only by dividing the work can we cooperate. You're welcome. Li Qingshan smiled and shouted at the soldiers, "You guys who killed the traitor with your own hands?" I killed one. I also killed one. I killed half of him." "You brat, you're not honest. What's with half?" Li Qingshan said with a smile, causing a wave of laughter. "That guy was about to die when I slashed down with my sword. It was Old Five who insisted on killing him. Little Six, you're talking nonsense. I think that guy is very tough. Your sword definitely couldn't kill him. Comrades, Old Five is right. Don't forget to kill him. If you meet an enemy in the future, you might as well slash a few more times. As long as you kill someone today, I will reward you all. If you don't regret it. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future." The soldiers no longer felt uncomfortable killing for the first time. Instead, their blood was boiling. Gu Yenying smiled and shook his head. If this guy became a general, the morale he would receive would definitely be much higher than mine. Li Qingshan waved his hand. "Brats, it's time to set off. The world is ours." The army set off. Close to 100 ships of all sizes flowed down the river. A large ship covered in iron acted as the flagship and broke through the layers of ice. More than 10 heads were hung high on the mast. No one dared to look down on this World Union leader anymore. The morale of the army became more and more united. The howl of the ape suddenly sounded. There was not a trace of sorrow in it. It was filled with the pride of galloping across the world. Chapter 1192. There were many towns and villages on both sides of the river. Needless to say, the positions of mayor and village head were all held by people with the surname Ma. Li Qingshan would not let go of this opportunity to spread the seeds of revolution. Along the way, he broke into every city and village he came across. He held countless public trials and killed many people with the surname Ma. The Ma family was really evil. After going to so many places, he couldn't find a single person who did good deeds. Hearing about their evil deeds and watching their heads fall to the ground, it was really satisfying to kill them. Of course, not all people with the surname Ma deserved to die. Li Qingshan didn't slaughter the whole family, but he certainly confiscated their property. After a winter, the army was short of provisions. If there was any shortage, they could buy it with money on the spot, and they didn't offend the people. The name Chivalrous King was really spread, and it was a righteous one. When the army set off, the whole city would be sent off, and everyone would shed tears of gratitude. More people joined the World Assembly. After traveling for only a few hundred miles, the fleet had almost doubled in size, which showed the support of the people. Even though there were swordsmen who were dissatisfied with Li Qingshan, they couldn't help but sigh. Since ancient times, I've never heard of a great devil who brought disaster to the martial arts world doing such a thing. No matter how powerful those people are, how powerful they are all full of selfishness. No, even if they are righteous people, aren't they the same? Maybe this is the only way to be called chivalrous. A spark turned into a prairie fire. At the same time, it was still freezing in the extreme north. Many Jianghu heroes were exploring the rugged snowfield, surrounding this empty wasteland like an iron bucket, guarding against the countless prying eyes in the distant forest. A skinny man with a mustache and a compass in his hand, like an accountant, hurried to a big tent and said loudly, Marvelous mathematician requests to see the Alliance Master. Come in. A dignified voice came from the tent. The guard opened the heavy curtain, and Marvelous mathematician bowed and entered the tent. A gust of hot air hit his face, and he saw luxury, wealth, and pearls everywhere. Under his feet was a soft and thick carpet, and he couldn't feel the coldness of the snow at all. The tent was very spacious, and a group of young girls were serving on the side quietly. Two men were drinking tea with their hands held high. Every movement they made exuded the dignity of a superior. I pay my respects to Alliance Leader Zhang and Leader Ma. Master God Diviner bowed deeply to Zhang Yuntian. His eyes turned and landed on the silver-haired old man, and he bowed deeply. Zhang Yuntian had come to the north in a hurry. So this luxurious life was naturally the work of the Ma family, the #1 aristocratic family in the northern region. This old man was the head of the Ma family, Ma Shinkong, also known as the Heavenly Horse. However, what the clairvoyant diviner envied was his other nickname, Stud Horse. Ma Shinkong was already an old man, but he was still able to have sex with many women every day. He had countless beauties in his harem, and they had given birth to hundreds of children and grandchildren for him. However, not only did he not regard the word stud as a disgrace, he even took pride in it. He even boasted that if every descendant of the Ma family was as powerful as he was, he would definitely be able to defeat the Ma family. There were no other surnames in the northern region. How is it? Zhang Yuntian put down his teacup. He had been waiting for almost an entire winter. He had gone to the north several times, but he had never been able to find the fallen fiend star. So he invited the Master of Divination, Master God Diviner. He used the secret method of the Divine Divination sect to calculate where the fiend star had fallen. As soon as spring came, the Ma family sent a large number of people to the north to conduct a large-scale search. Finally, they found the place where the fiend star had fallen, but they couldn't find any trace of it. Alliance Leader Bing, according to my calculations, this is the place where the fiend star fell. This is the place where the demon star crashed, and it even caused a landslide. Master God Diviner, are you saying that the fiend star is buried here? Ma Shinkong's voice boomed like a bell. I can only say that the fiend star fell here. As for whether or not it's below, that's hard to say. Then what the hell are you talking about? Brother Ma, this is not your territory. This isn't your territory. It belongs to that old ape from the Ape Deity Mountain Manor. It's not impossible for him to get the fiend star before you. Zhang Yuntian took a sip of tea. He was the one who had invited Master God Diviner. He couldn't just let people insult him. The reason he had gone north alone was because ordinary fighters couldn't move around in this world of ice and snow, and also to guard against Ma Shinkong. He didn't want to get a share of the spoils. That's impossible. The fiend star isn't a pebble that can be taken away at will. Although the White Ape King is a master swordsman, this is no ordinary frozen ground. There's no way to dig a tunnel here. Even if I send all the miners here, it'll take 2 or 3 months to dig through the rubble. The Ape Deity Mountain Villa doesn't have the manpower to do that. Ma Shinkong toned down a bit, but what he was implying was that without the manpower and resources of the Ma family, even if you were the leader of the martial arts world, you wouldn't be able to see the fiend star. I've already sent people to the Ape Deity Mountain Villa to pay a visit. I believe they'll be back soon. If that old ape really did get the fiend star, there's no way to hide it. We can't do anything to him anyway. I believe we'll get news soon. Why didn't the leader tell me? I don't think Brother Ma wants to spend so much effort just to dig up a pile of rocks. Anyway, there's no way we can hide anything from the White Ape King, so why don't we just say it out loud? Zhang Yuntian's expression suddenly changed. Brother Ma, please wait a moment. I'll go out and take a look. If there's really any rotten fish or stinky shrimp that wants a share, I'll go teach them a lesson. Zhang Yuntian took the marvelous diviner out of the tent. The people he had sent to the ape deity mountain villa had finally returned. A young man who looked very much like Ma Xingkong asked, curiously, "Grandpa, isn't the fiend star's descent a bad thing? It would be better if it was buried by a landslide. Why do so many people want to get their hands on it?" "My dear grandson, you don't understand. As the saying goes, when misfortune turns to fortune, there's always a blessing in disguise. You know, the seven-slaughtering demon lord, he was just an ordinary swordsman who was being hunted down by his enemies. Coincidentally, the fiend star fell, and he comprehended the seven slaughter knife technique. He killed all his enemies and founded the seven slaughtering demon sect. It took the combined efforts of the 4 great clans and 7 great sects to destroy it. And that's just one example. Everyone who came into contact with the fiend star and survived made great progress in their martial arts. As long as they have a strong will and are not bewitched by the fiend star, they can comprehend the ultimate martial arts, unify the martial world, and shatter the void. Grandpa, I'll make the fiend star surname Ma too. A cold breeze blew in. Ma Xingkong was about to curse when he saw Zhang Yuntian walk in with a frown. The ape deity mountain villa has been reduced to ruins. It seems like it was struck by lightning and set on fire. Ha, retribution. What about the white ape king and those swordsmen? They couldn't have been burned to death, could they? They're all missing. Only a few corpses were found in the backyard. Zhang Yuntian's frown deepened. He felt that there was something strange about this whole thing. What? Did they really swallow the fiend star and run away? No, that's impossible. Chapter 1193. You said that Ma Xingkong led a large group of people to the north to find the demon star, and is not in the Galloping Horse City now. As the army went down the river, the weather gradually became warmer, and the towns on both sides of the river became more and more prosperous. Li Qingshan had just conquered a small town and found that there were many people from the martial arts world in the town, so he asked and got the news. In this way, this small town was located in the middle of the Galloping Horse City and the place where they fell. Yes, Your Highness, now the whole martial arts world is alarmed. Many people are going north to find the demon star, but it is said that the Ma family has sealed the place. Those below the innate realm are not even qualified to get close. A group of people from the martial arts world looked at Li Qingshan cautiously. They were all surprised and doubtful. They had never heard of such a person in the world who dared to openly oppose the Ma family, and could even make those two obedient, becoming his left and right protectors. However, the white ape swordplay technique was indeed very tempting. Unlike the 9 regions where swordsmen were the minority, in this world, swordsmanship was the mainstream. Gu Yenying nodded slightly. I see. But what is the demon star you are talking about? Li Qingshan glanced at her in surprise. Wasn't Fiend Star referring to them? But after thinking for a while, he understood that the perception of the demon star in this world was a bit strange. On the one hand, it was said to be a sign of disaster, which was normal. Ignorant conjectures would inevitably have such inexplicable associations. On the other hand, it seemed to be some kind of rare treasure which caused the whole world to be in turmoil. Why did it sound like a rock of slaughter? It was also the original form of one of the 3 great demon generals under Spider Queen Loltha's command, Strong Boulder. He had fallen into the 9 provinces from the Azura realm, so he was contaminated with the violent killing intent of the Azura realm. It could obviously affect his mind. It was not surprising that his martial arts could be greatly improved. The Stone of Slaughter contained pure and vast spiritual energy. Although it was difficult to turn into a monster in this world, it was like a great tonic for this group of people from the martial arts world. As long as they could get a trace of spiritual energy from it, they could be reborn. Not to mention the killing intent of the Azura path, which contained the extreme of martial arts, could be said to transform a person from the spirit to the body. With all these reasons, one could well imagine the chaos and slaughter caused by the previous demon star. The descent of the demon star will bring chaos to the world was not some ignorant rumor. On the contrary, it was because of their preconceived notions that led to misunderstandings. That was the previous demon star that descended into the world. Where is he now? Li Qingshan asked again. Pudu Temple was located in the middle region and was one of the 7 great sections. It could even be said to be the leader of the 7 great sections. Li Qingshan did not know if it had the boundless Buddhist Dharma. However, their power was definitely not small. Those monks sure are scheming. Li Qingshan smiled. The big temples could gather the power of faith and greatly weaken the killing intent of the Rock of Slaughter. The pure spiritual energy contained within was enough to turn the entire temple into a spiritual land. This item was prepared for you. Gu Yenying gently waved her iron fan. Not bad. Li Qingshan nodded. As long as he could absorb the spiritual energy from the Rock of Slaughter, his strength would be restored quickly. However, there is no need to rush. Let's take down the Galloping Horse City first. Didn't you say something like the countryside surrounding the city? Gu Yenying said. This is because you did not understand my spirit. The city can also radiate to the countryside. The key is to seize the opportunity and destroy the enemy's strength. Li Qingshan clenched his fist. Those martial artists looked at each other. Although it was a little inexplicable, they could clearly feel the horror contained in it. The Ma family was going to be in big trouble this time. Gu Yenying immediately passed down the order, and the army went straight to the Galloping Horse City. Half of the people in the Galloping Horse City belonged to the Ma family. However, not all of them were rich and powerful. Usually, even the poor families were arrogant and looked down on other families. However, these days, their faces changed when they talked about the word Ma. Rumors spread in the city. There was a guy called the Night King who specialized in killing people with the surname Ma. Now, no one knew how many families he had killed. He was extremely cruel. It was said that he did not even let go of newborn babies. The others were branded by him and turned into slaves. There were also some rumors that were even more bizarre. Some said that they had to offer him a virgin every day, or else he would fly into a rage and start a massacre. These rumors were exaggerated according to Ma Xingkong's hobbies, but they were so vivid and convincing that the people in the city were in a state of panic. The men were speechless and the women were in tears. When the long fleet of ships went down the river and approached the Galloping Horse City, the whole city was shocked and alarm bells rang. It was dusk. The setting sun dyed the city wall red. Gu Yenying fixed her eyes on the city wall and saw that the city wall was tall and the city gate was thick. There were thousands of people walking on top of the city wall. Even though they did not receive proper military training, they all knew martial arts. This showed the deep foundation of the Ma family. In this battle, the Ma family did not have an advantage in terms of quantity or quality. Moreover, the army was restricted by the terrain. If they attacked the city by force, they would suffer heavy losses. Their victory would be interrupted, and the situation would become very unfavorable. Qingshan, what are you thinking about? Li Qingshan stood at the bow of the ship and listened to the urgent bell. What do you want to eat for dinner? That is a problem. Gu Yenying smiled. Li Qingshan laughed and jumped down from the bow of the ship. Hundreds of people followed behind him. Some of them had excellent lightness skills and left no traces on the water. Some of them were clumsy and heavy. Plop. However, they all knew martial arts. Among them, there were only a few swordsmen from the villa. Instead, there were more martial artists gathered along the way. However, in terms of strength, the swordsmen still had the absolute advantage. With the two protectors working together, it would not be a problem for them to kill everyone. At this moment, they all gathered around Li Qingshan. They did not form any formation. They were either unruly swordsmen or heroes from the wilderness. They could not be restrained by military law. They had always been under Li Qingshan's command. They were more like a gang. It's getting late. I won't talk nonsense. I don't want to miss dinner. I heard that Ma Xinkong's old nest has a lot of good wine. I will treat everyone to wine tonight. I also heard that the old man has a lot of wives. I don't think he will need them in the future. Why don't we share some? Everyone roared with laughter and cheered. However, let me say the ugly words first. Today, I will be the vanguard. You guys follow behind. If I find anyone escaping— Li Qingshan paused. I can't do anything to him. However, one day, there will be no place for him in the world. We are willing to follow your highness to kill the enemy. Good. Raise the flag. Chapter 1194. The army lined up on the red plains, Gu Yenning in her silver armor on a white horse, calmly commanding the troops. Li Qingshan walked at the front of everyone, the sunset elongating his shadow towards the direction of the Galloping Horse City. Different from the other martial artists, he wore a black, heavy armor, a horned helmet on his head, and in addition to the mixed iron flagpole in his hand, his outfit weighed over 1,000 caddies, making him look like an Iron Man standing there. Every step he took made a pung sound, leaving a deep footprint behind him. His movements were slow and clumsy, and the others had to slow down to follow him. As he neared the city gate, he gradually sped up. The footprints behind him became lighter and lighter, as though he was stepping on a spring, immediately bouncing up, becoming faster and faster. The thumping of his footsteps was like a gradually accelerating heartbeat, beating on the hearts of everyone on the city wall. He wants to barge in. Quickly release the arrows. Quickly prepare the stones. When he comes over, we will smash him to death, take revenge for our dead clansmen. The shouts from the top of the city wall continued. The sound of arrows piercing through the air could be heard. Most of them were aimed at Li Qingshan, the heavy armor clanking, creating sparks, but only leaving white marks. The left and right protectors followed closely, waving their swords to cut down most of the arrows. Ah! There was a cry of pain. Someone was still hit by an arrow, but his reaction was quick. He avoided being hit in his vital organs, pulled out the arrow, clenched his teeth, and followed. Another cry of pain could be heard, but no one fell. As they were all martial artists, they would not be killed by an arrow, and no one was left behind. No one knew what they were feeling. They only knew that the man at the front had already brought everyone with him, turning them into a part of his aura. Unknowingly, they were no longer just martial artists who liked to fight. Li Qingshan felt a surge of power entering his body. This was the meaning of the scarlet tiger flag in his hand. Like Gu Yenning, he was now the commander of the troops, turning them into a war machine under his lead. The aura of a mere 100 people was not inferior to the army behind him. When they neared the city gate, a shout came from the top of the city wall. Quickly throw the stones. The martial artists could not help but look up. It was different from the light arrows if they were hit by the stones. Even if their brains did not explode, their bones would break. There was a buzz. A black cloud flew over their heads and scattered on top of the city walls. Miserable cries rang out, and several figures covered in arrows fell down. Gu Yenning sat high on the horse. The iron fan in his hand still maintained its forward posture. The soldiers at the front were all armed with crossbows. After easily suppressing the guards who did not know how to defend the city, he immediately ordered, "Change the swords." Li Qingshan suddenly put down the flagpole in his hand like a big spear. He took a deep step into the ground and shouted, "Break!" With a loud bang, the ironclad heavy gate was pierced through, directly smashing the head of one of the guards. Splinters of wood flew through the air. Shock appeared on the faces of the other guards, but before they could react, there was an even louder explosion. A human figure protruded out of the city gate, and then it shattered. Li Qingshan barged into the city and did not even look back. He swung the flag and sent over a dozen guards flying with a series of crackles. He laughed aloud. The one who took down the city is Li Qingshan. At the same time, sword marks crisscrossed on the distorted city gate behind him. The left and right protectors attacked at the same time and completely shattered the city gate. An old man in a brocade robe with a golden saber in his hand rushed down the city wall with a large group of people. The aura he exuded was also at the innate 8th level. At first glance, it was obvious that he was a person who was second only to Ma Xingkong in the Ma family. When he saw the faces of the left and right guardians, he said angrily, "It's you." This world was not big, and there were not many people who could be called masters. The Ma family has no enmity with you. When you went to the deity ape mountain villa, you even gave us gold and silver. Why did you bite the hand that feeds you? The left and right guardians were silent. Compared to the supreme swordsmanship and breaking through the void, this small favor was nothing. During this winter, they had also benefited a lot, and their martial arts had improved greatly. Often, Li Qingshan only had to casually give them some pointers, and they would see the light at the end of the tunnel. Compared to the pages of the white ape sword technique, this was what was truly valuable to them. After all, the white ape king was only at the innate 10th level. No matter how good his swordsmanship was, it was still limited, not to mention the book he had written. How could it compare to Li Qingshan, who had comprehended the hidden sword of heaven and earth? Li Qingshan laughed and said, "Old thing, I will return the gold and silver, but I will burn it for you. You can have as much as you want." The old man in the brocade robe was furious. He waved his golden saber and said, "The survival of the Ma family depends on this battle. Children, follow me and kill." The Ma family guards and the clansmen who had been temporarily gathered to defend the city numbered more than 10,000. They roared together, and like a tsunami, they rushed forward. Even the left and right guardians, who were great swordsmen, could not help but tremble at this moment. Ordinary fights in the Jianghu would not have more than 100 people, and more often it would be 3 to 5 people or even one-on-one. They had never seen such a big scene. Bang! With a heavy footstep, they suddenly realized that Li Qingshan had already rushed into the enemy's formation, and they hurriedly chased after him. Li Qingshan rushed forward, his banner like a dragon. The left and right guardians guarded him, their swords cutting like knives. The other martial artists followed behind, like a sharp knife stabbing into the enemy's formation, killing until figures were sent flying and broken limbs flew. Although the Ma family had more than 10,000 people, only a dozen or so could get close to the 3 of them. They had not gone through battle training, so they were in a mess, and there was no room to maneuver, so it was difficult for them to use their martial arts. The old man in embroidered robe raised his golden knife and tried to rush forward several times, but he restrained himself. He was afraid that if he got close now, he would not be able to block the 3 people's joint attack, and his life would be in danger immediately. He could only shout loudly and cut down a few guards who were retreating in panic, blood dripping down the knife and sword. Li Qingshan was already bathed in blood, but he borrowed the power of the earth Not only did he not feel tired, but the more he fought, the more valiant he became. There was almost no time for him to catch his breath, and he only needed to wave the 300 to 400 pounds iron flag in his hand, and he could cause great damage, displaying the advantage of strength to the extreme. Thanks to the thick and heavy special armor, he did not know how many times he would have suffered. He did not retreat a step and stepped on the corpses, opening up a bloody path, and went straight to the old man in embroidered robe. The left and right protectors felt great pressure. No matter how exquisite their sword techniques were, they could not be used in this kind of battle, and there were a few knives slashing at them at every moment. They could only push their jinchi to the extreme, and also simplify their sword techniques to the extreme, waving their swords without regard for anything else. The demeanor of a peerless expert and the principle of killing with one sword were all thrown to the back of their minds. However, this consumed a lot of jinchi, and in a short time their jinchi was almost depleted by half, and they were at the mercy of others. Although no one could stop them if they wanted to escape, they looked at Li Qingshan in front of them, and perhaps he was about to comprehend the true meaning of the way of the sword, so they wholeheartedly threw themselves into the slaughter. The way of the sword, the way of killing. With a neighing sound, Gu Yenying took the lead and led the army into the city. The battle formation pushed forward layer by layer, and it was like a meat grinder grinding the flesh and blood of both sides, advancing continuously. It actually formed a faintly discernible long snake in the air, twisting its body as it slithered forward. This was the one-line snake formation of the militarists. The enemy panicked, and they raised their heads as they retreated. The embroidered-robed elder killed another 10 people, and he roared, "Don't be afraid. It's just an illusion. Whoever dares to take a step back will be the traitor of the Ma family." He was also puzzled, other than the 100 people on the other side. They were obviously rough men who did not know martial arts, so how could they gather together and have such power? And it was as if they were going to crush them head-on, but he understood one thing. If this continued, they would definitely lose the battle. Passing through the surging sea of people, he saw Gu Yenying riding on a white horse, and he ordered a group of Ma family's experts beside him. "Kill the one riding on the white horse." More than 10 innate experts leaped out, and with their qinggong, they stepped on the surging sea of people and directly attacked Gu Yenying. Under the silver eagle's visor, Gu Yenying smiled. As expected, in a battle, the military's aura was the most condensed. Although this long snake did not have any actual destructive power, it made her stronger. And didn't she dress up so conspicuously for this moment? Li Qingshan fiercely waved the big flag and created an empty space, and he shouted, "Left and right protectors, now is the time." 2 sword rays pierced through the air, and the left and right protectors flew up on their swords, slashing towards the embroidered-robed elder. Gu Yenying waved the iron fan in her hand, and more than 10 innate experts fell into the sea of people like dumplings killed by the sword rays and trampled into meat paste. The embroidered-robed elder suddenly widened his eyes. How is this possible? What did she do? He did not have time to think, and he waved his golden blade to meet the sword rays. He waited at ease, and there was still a large number of protectors beside him, so he was not at a disadvantage at all. "Go!" Li Qingshan raised the big flag with his right hand, and with all his strength, he threw it. Chapter 1195. The noisy crowd became quiet. The old man's eyes widened. He had been on guard all this time, so why couldn't he dodge it? The left and right protectors looked at each other in surprise. Just now, the power of that attack was so great that even they couldn't dodge it. They couldn't help but think of Ho Hongtao's death. This man's strength was always so unfathomable. He wasn't very strong normally, but he could easily crush all enemies at the crucial moment. Li Qingshan lowered his right hand, and dispersed the five-colored light. He shouted, "The killer is Li Qingshan." In a split second, a tsunami of cheers came from behind. Although he didn't have a weapon in his hand, the Ma family's protectors all retreated with fear on their faces. He walked step by step to the front of the old man and said, "Enough! Don't force yourself. Don't force me to finish you off." The old man raised his hand and pointed at Li Qingshan. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but blood immediately gushed out. He died with his eyes wide open. The golden blade in his hand fell. Li Qingshan extended his hand and grabbed the hilt of the blade. He swung it casually and smiled. "It's a little light, but it's still easier to wield." Afterwards, he shook off his damaged heavy armor, and his bearing changed once more. "Grandpa! Grandpa! You can't die." A beautiful woman recklessly rushed over and threw herself under the embroidered-robed elder's body. She let out a mournful wail. She was originally one of the 10 great beauties of the world, and now that she was heartbroken, she couldn't help but be moved to tears. She turned around, and her eyes were filled with hatred. She swung the blade at Li Qingshan and said, "Give me back my grandpa's life." A golden light flashed, and a beautiful head flew up. Her face was still filled with confusion, as if she couldn't believe that someone could really attack her. Blood spurted out from her neck, and the headless body ran a few steps before falling to the ground. "Ha! Your blade technique is too weak." Li Qingshan had a mocking expression. If you want to kill someone, you have to be prepared to be killed. Moreover, he was immersed in the long-lost pleasure of swinging the blade. He didn't even notice whether the woman was beautiful or ugly. "You bastard! Everyone, let's kill this demon together." The woman was obviously extremely favored in the Ma family, and she had countless admirers. At this moment, she was beheaded. Everyone was enraged. Then here comes the question: am I a beast or a demon? Li Qingshan extended his hand and grabbed the woman's descending blade. Since it was lacking in quality, let's make up for it with quantity. A wild laugh rang out. He wielded both swords. Xiao Chun stretched his arm and started spinning. The layers of saber lights turned into a tornado. He rampaged through the crowd. Everywhere he went, severed limbs and heads rolled on the ground. This was the tiger demon's unique savage dance. It roared and leaped, grinding its teeth to suck blood, and devoured life in large mouthfuls. What kind of saber skill is this? Compared to this, the Ma family's saber technique was not even worth mentioning. Even his father's 7-kill saber technique could not compare. I've never heard of the name Li Qingshan before. Could it be that he also obtained the power of the demon star? On a tall pavilion in the distance, a pale and thin youth was lying on the ground. He looked at this scene with his mouth agape. He was carrying a long bag on his back. It was obvious that it was a saber or a sword, but for some reason, he refused to show it to others. At this moment, the bag on his back was trembling slightly. Suddenly, he stood up and shouted, "Hero King, I'm here to help you." He jumped down from the building. Li Qingshan glanced at him strangely, with his level of mockery. There was actually someone he didn't know coming to help him. Although this youth was young, he had also broken through the innate realm. The bag on his back spread open, and he pulled out a long saber. The blade was as black as ink without a trace of light, but it was several meters long. With one slash, he killed 3 Ma family experts. His pale face was filled with hysterical killing intent. "The saber is not bad," Li Qingshan said. In this world, the 2 sabers in his hands could be considered treasure sabers, but they were already riddled with scars. 7 slaughtering demon saber. That kid is the successor of the 7 slaughtering demon king. There were quite a number of martial artists in the city who were watching the battle from afar. They were terrified and dazzled. So many famous masters had been killed so easily. Some of them had even died in the hands of soldiers with average martial arts. Many people recognized the saber as soon as they saw it. Compared to Li Qingshan, the hero king, the seven slaughtering demon king was more famous. He also rose after the demon star came to the world and set off a bloody storm in the martial arts world. The demon star came to the world, and the world was in chaos. It was not a lie. He couldn't help but have the same guess as the thin youth. This man named Li Qingshan must have obtained the power of the demon star. That was why he had such a violent killing intent. The Ma family was like a group of dragons without a leader. The left and right protectors didn't need to attack the enemy. They used their excellent sword art and turned into two sword lights, twisting and turning in the sea of people looking for the enemy experts to assassinate. Although the army led by Gu Yenying also suffered many casualties, their morale was getting stronger. The long snake in the sky became more and more serious. A pair of cold snake eyes glanced down, and it flicked its bright red tongue, as if it was choosing people to eat. The sun went down to the horizon, and blood dyed the earth red instead of the sunset. The white horse under Gu Yenying was almost dyed bright red, and it was panting heavily. The tenacity of the Ma family was unexpected. It seemed that everyone became crazy because of this battle that they had never seen before. She looked up at the cold sky and thought, "Is it God's will again?" It played a great role in manipulating people's hearts when they were in chaos. Otherwise, the enemy would have been defeated a long time ago. However, this was a good thing. If these people all fled back to the city to fight in the streets, the city couldn't form a large-scale military formation. In that case, 10 armored soldiers were not a match for one warrior, and it would take a lot of trouble to clean them up. It was better to wipe them out in one battle. She didn't worry about losing this battle. Li Qingshan and the left and right protectors were reducing the gap between the quality of the two sides. If it was just a competition of quantity, more soldiers were pouring into the city. These were the newly recruited armored soldiers. Although there were many of them, they didn't have much training, and they didn't have any armor. So she put them at the back in the beginning. Although they couldn't exert much combat power at this time, it was enough to strengthen the army. The huge snake formed by the rolling military chi became more and more solid until it was completely formed. Seeing that Li Qingshan and the left and right protectors had almost cleaned up the backbone of the Ma family, Gu Yenying waved her iron fan, and the huge snake shrank and pounced, swallowing dozens of Ma family's guards. No, it's not an illusion. It's a snake demon, such a big snake demon. Facing an unimaginable method, the morale of the Ma family instantly collapsed, and they turned to escape. The battle turned into a chase. Li Qingshan was still charging in front, and he didn't care about the Jianghu's morality at all. He killed anyone he saw without mercy. He turned into a bloody man, and the light of his blade was accompanied by a wild laughter, causing those who heard it to tremble, and those who saw it to lose their courage. Chapter 1196. The flag on the city wall changed. The red tiger flag fluttered. Although it was a bit broken and soaked in blood, it looked even more majestic. The smell of blood inside the city gate was so thick that it could not be dispersed. The ground became muddy after absorbing the blood. The soldiers cleaned the battlefield and killed the enemies who were still alive. Just now, they did not feel it in the fierce battle. Now they saw the corpses everywhere and the blood flowing like a river. It was like hell. Many people vomited on the ground, but they had to continue cleaning after they got up. Gradually, they got used to it. After this battle, they were no longer new soldiers. Gu Yenying clearly felt that with the end of the battle and the loss of people, the morale of the army was greatly weakened. However, the quality was improved. Maybe there were more ingenious ways to take down the city, but this was not a personal grudge. It was an all-out war. Only through blood and fire could this army be valuable. The crows did not care about returning to their nests. They flapped their wings and pecked at the corpses. Li Qingshan led his men to take over the inner city, which was the mansion of the Ma family. He put out the fire that was about to start in time and cleaned up a few remaining forces along the way. He also killed a few martial arts people who wanted to fish in troubled waters. Only then did he stabilize the overall situation. He was worried about Gu Yenying, so he returned to the city gate. He saw that the people around him were all tired. Even the left and right protectors were no exception. After all, not everyone had the endless support of the force of Earth. He smiled and said, "Thank you for your hard work. Sit down and rest." He threw away the broken swords and sat on a corpse. Hearing this, everyone sat down on the ground as if their bones had been pulled out. The left and right protectors did not care about their identity as swordsmen. They hugged their swords and leaned against the wall to rest. Only the thin teenager came to Li Qingshan. He did not care about the blood and mud on the ground and bowed deeply. "What's wrong with you?" Li Qingshan asked with a smile. "Great king, please accept me as your disciple. I thought you were inspired by my righteousness. I did not expect you to have such an idea." Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows, but he wasn't angry. Looking at the black saber in the youth's hand, he said, "Although your saber technique is a little lacking, your saber is not bad." Hearing Li Qingshan praising his saber twice, the thin teenager felt conflicted and gritted his teeth. He suddenly held the blade with both hands. "Lei Lai is willing to offer this blade to His Highness as an apprenticeship gift." "Is this the 7 slaughtering demon blade?" A cold light flashed in the left protector's eyes. "Are you the disciple of the 7 slaughtering demon lord?" The right protector asked. "I am the son of the 7 slaughtering demon lord," Lei Lai said proudly, causing the crowd to gasp. The 7 slaughtering demon lord. Li Qingshan only knew of this name through Fiend Star. He was the lucky one who obtained Fiend Star's power. No wonder the aura of this saber was so familiar. It was probably forged from the metal contained in the demon star. Naturally, it carried the aura of the Azura Dao. However, he smiled and shook his head. "I was just thinking of my own saber. Why would I want your saber? Since your father gave it to you, you should keep it well." Lei Lai let out a sigh of relief. This saber was a family heirloom, which meant a lot to him. However, he felt a deep sense of disappointment. Compared with a peerless saber technique, this saber was nothing. He said unwillingly, "I don't know what kind of saber you have, but I dare say that there is no saber in the world that can compare with this one." "You are still too young." Li Qingshan laughed. How could such a saber compare with the wildflower saber at the end of the road? "Your Highness, could it be that you're afraid that my identity will bring you trouble? If that's the case, I'll take my leave now." Lei Lai's pale face flushed red. "Lei Lai, have you ever done anything evil?" "I have been practicing saber since I was 3 years old. There is no chance for me to do evil. Even my father was slandered by the world. I don't care who your father is. It is enough for me to know you. From today on, you are a member of the world society." "Yes, but it is not convenient for me to accept disciples, and you are not suitable to use sabers. Throw this saber away, and use a sword from now on." Li Qingshan waved his hand. The left and right protectors looked at each other and nodded. In this way, his identity as the son of the seven-slaughtering demon lord could be concealed. Even if it was exposed, it could be said that he had turned over a new leaf and the reputation of the world society would not be damaged. Li Qingshan did not think so at all. He had never cared about the name Seven-Slaughtering Demon Lord. He had only seen through Lei Lai's background with his own knowledge. Everyone in the world regarded the sword as the king of all weapons. A saber, on the other hand, could be taken out by a villager to chop firewood and meat without much practice. There had always been swordsmanship, and no so-called saber. At most, it could only be said to be saber techniques. There was no Tao of the saber, and there was no dignity to speak of. However, in the Azura realm, the position of the saber was very high. If weapons were born to kill, then the saber would develop this killing intent to the extreme, making it difficult to control. Because it was simple and almost mediocre, it could not bring out its strengths. Therefore, there were not many Azura who used the saber. The saber was the courage of all weapons. Li Qingshan's first enlightenment came from the saber. What? Lei Lai was shocked and angry at the same time. He had been practicing the saber since he was born and waved the saber 10,000 times a day. Today, someone said that he was not suitable to use the saber. You are full of hatred, and your heart is controlled by the saber. If you continue to practice, you will only become a madman. He is right. If you don't believe me, you can leave this saber for a while. The killing intent in your heart will naturally weaken. Not everyone is as warlike and bloodthirsty as him. Gu Yening rode over. Even though she was wearing a silver eagle mask, her voice could not help but warm people's hearts. Li Qingshan licked his lips and grinned. Sometimes, I really want to know what it feels like to cut you down with a saber. Other people use a sword to cut off the threads of love. What's up with you, using a saber? Gu Yening joked. Haha, a sword cutting off the threads of love and a saber cutting people. The effect should be about the same. Lei Lai held the saber hilt tightly, and his expression changed. At this moment, there was a whoosh and a flock of crows flew up in panic. Li Qingshan immediately arched his back and spread his fingers as if he was a beast that had sensed danger. However, a lazy yawn rang out from behind him. A child walked out from behind him. His expression was dispirited and melancholy that did not match his age. He glanced at Li Qingshan. Thank you, sleepyhead. I had such a deep sleep. What is this place? Little Ming. Li Qingshan revealed a surprised expression because this unknown divine son had become even younger. He looked like he was only 3 to 5 years old, and his aura had weakened to below the first heaven's tribulation. However, he did not know how he had walked out of the Azura field that was imprisoned in this world. Luo Ho Xiaoming put his hands on his waist and looked up at the stars. He seemed to see that this was a small world and said with a disdainful expression, You are really going backwards. You have the cheek to say that. Li Qingshan laughed and thought, You are just thanking me. Do you have any gifts? Yes, it must let me bring it out. Chapter 1197. Li Qingshan was overjoyed and grabbed the hilt. Ahua! Gu Yening tilted her head. What kind of stupid name was that? This world is so oppressive. Also, don't call me Ahua, you idiot. Frenzy Flower Sword Soul's weak voice resounded in Li Qingshan's mind. Li Qingshan did not care. He waved his last life Frenzy Flower Blade and slashed in front of Lei Lai. Brat, I'll show you what a blade is. A violent and wanton killing intent assaulted his face. Lei Lai could not help but retreat and fall on his, but everyone was shocked. What kind of blade was this? Even though it was heavily suppressed by this world, the saber was not a true living creature. It would not weaken to the extreme and would still retain a trace of its strength. At the very least, its sharpness and toughness would not be greatly affected. In this world, it was practically a divine weapon. What made everyone feel strange was the sudden appearance of the child. Just now, everyone could clearly feel the dangerous aura. Even now, they were still in shock. The crows circled in the air and did not dare to land, but now he looked so weak and dispirited. Their gazes returned to Li Qingshan. There were too many mysteries surrounding this man. Li Qingshan waved his blade, excitedly. Frenzy Flower Sword Soul asked curiously, "What's wrong with you, brat? Why is your killing intent so weak?" Li Qingshan nodded and said, "And I'm not suited to using a blade right now. I really don't have much killing intent." This world suppressed the tiger demon. Although the ape demon was violent and restless, it was not bloodthirsty. The expressions of the bystanders were strange. Just based on the way you slaughtered just now, you think you don't have any killing intent. Forget it. It's good that you're alive. Frenzy Flower Sword Soul said. Unknowingly, he had already forgotten the thought of counterattacking at any time. Li Qingshan thought for a moment and made a decision. He ordered someone to bring a thick white silk and let the last life Frenzy Flower blade restrain its edge. He patiently wrapped the blade layer by layer. "What are you doing?" Gu Yenying asked curiously. "Feng Dao," Li Qingshan said. He came to this world in order to practice the ape demon transformation. It was easy for him to kill with the last man's wildflower saber. However, he had wasted such a good opportunity. If he wanted to kill them, he might as well kill them in the Azura realm. What was the point of bullying a bunch of weak natives? It was better to maintain a pure heart and not be disturbed by other factors. She can't kill to her heart's content here, and I can't kill to my heart's content either. I might as well not use it. Wildflower Sword Soul accepted it calmly and said, "Hey, don't be so full of yourself." He had to use it even if he had to. If you are defeated by someone, even if you don't feel ashamed, I will. Of course, I'm not an idiot. How could I not know how to retaliate when I'm being bullied? You should take a rest first. All right, don't let me wait too long. In the eyes of others, Li Qingshan was talking to his saber. It was rare to see a soul weapon in the 9 prefectures, let alone in this remote, small world. "I understand." Lei Lai bowed deeply, stood up, and sheathed his saber. Li Qingshan was such a saber fanatic, yet he could still seal his saber. If he continued to be unreasonable, he would be too petty. "However, I am not giving up on saber arts. I am also learning from you to seal your saber and use sword arts to correct my nature. One day, I will be able to control it. I hope that when the time comes, Prince, you will accept me as your disciple. We'll talk about it when the time comes." Li Qingshan put his saber on his back and strode toward the Ma clan's mansion. Gu Yenying urged her horse to follow closely behind. Luo Ho Xiaoming suddenly said, "I want to ride a horse." Gu Yenying could already tell that Luo Ho Xiaoming had an unusual background. She smiled and said, "You are called Little Ming, right? Was this name given to you by the person in front?" "You are quite smart." Luo Ho Xiaoming's eyes flashed. He seemed to see something from her. No wonder they were able to fly through the distant void and come to this world. "I'll let you ride my horse. Do I have a gift?" Gu Yenying got off the horse. "If you want to use military tactics to conquer the world, you better coax him." Li Qingshan turned around and said, "Understood." Gu Yenying stretched out her hand and carried Luo Ho Xiaoming onto the horse. As expected, his hellish torture did not have any reaction. This was something even Li Qingshan could not do. As promised, Li Qingshan set up a celebration banquet in the Ma clan's mansion. He rewarded the meritorious people. Gold, silver, treasures, techniques, and secret manuals were distributed like water after swallowing the Ma clan's 200 years of savings. This bit of reward was like a drizzle. However, it further solidified the army's morale and laid the foundation for conquering the world. With 1,000 miles of land and millions of people, as long as he had some time, it would be easy for him to replenish the power of the divine talisman of great creation. After this battle, it would not take long for the World Assembly to become famous in the world. At the banquet, Luo Ho Xiaoming sat between the two of them without saying a word. He did not drink or eat. He just sat there in a daze, looking depressed. He was very eye-catching. No one knew where he came from. Some people even whispered, "Is he the son of the two village masters?" Late at night, they returned to the backyard. The three of them sat facing each other under a lone lamp. "Tell me, what do you want me to do?" Li Qingshan took a sip of wine. This divine son of Azura was so kind as to help him bring out the frenzied flower saber. He was not a lay foam. Luo Ho Xiaoming played with the slingshot named Xiaoya. He lowered his head and said nothing. Gu Yenying stood at the side with her arms crossed. She took off her mask and looked very curious. Before listening to Li Qingshan talk about Luo Ho Xiaoming's background, she did not expect him to have such a great background. He was the divine son of Azura of the Rahu clan. Coming out from here, I'm afraid he did not wake up from his sleep. He was scared out of his wits. Li Qingshan took out the Azura field again. If I'm not wrong, the blood-colored whirlpool leading to the Azura realm is gradually recovering, and you are so weak that you cannot destroy it. He still felt a lingering fear when he thought about the giant eye that was spying on him. Luo Ho Xiaoming did not admit or deny it. He only asked, "You said you want to protect me. Are you just saying it casually, or are you serious?" "Usually I'm serious." However, if the owner of the eye directly kills his way into this world, you can just treat it as me casually saying it. Li Qingshan shrugged. If things really get to that point, even if you are willing to risk your life for me, it will be useless. I will do everything I can to protect you. This is all I can promise. That's enough. Right now, I have no choice but to believe you. Obviously, you've already noticed that I'm weakening day by day. In the future, I might be even weaker than a mortal baby. Even a wild beast can kill me. If I die now, I won't be able to be reborn in the Azura realm. Luo Ho Xiaoming reached out and clenched his fists tightly. However, he was still filled with weakness. He did not have the slightest fighting spirit that an Azura should have. "May I ask, how did you end up in such a state?" Luo Ho Xiaoming was silent for a moment. "Someone stole my heart." Li Qingshan immediately understood that it was not the lump of flesh and blood beating in his chest. Instead, it was the condensation of some kind of spiritual will. As expected, he had not lost his fighting spirit himself. Rather, someone had used some kind of method to steal his fighting spirit. This method was really beyond imagination. It was simply unimaginable. Heh, I feel like I'll be dragged into the war of the Azura realm sooner or later. Chapter 1198. Is that so? Li Qingshan looked deeply at Luo Ho Xiaoming. He understood that Luo Ho Xiaoming was not talking about the endless bloody battles of the Azura realm, but the war of gods. What are you afraid? With your current strength, it's indeed too much for you. A rare smile appeared on Luo Ho Xiaoming's face, a mocking smile. Hee, a little. Li Qingshan's answer exceeded Luo Ho Xiaoming's expectations, but he put away the mocking smile on his face. Very good. How could someone who did not understand fear be brave? Too many Azuras had forgotten this point, including himself back then, because he had an undying body, because he did not want to be worn down by his fighting spirit. He fearlessly threw himself into battle after battle, killing and being killed crazily, and finally lost his true colors. No wonder you were able to obtain its recognition. I hope you will never forget the fear in your heart. Is it talking about the Azura realm? Yes and no. Gu Yenying interrupted. I have a question. Little Ming, if you're currently being hunted down by a god from the Azura realm, then wouldn't it be a great disaster if he follows the Azura field and finds his way here? Frankly speaking, I don't think a small world like this can suppress a god. As soon as she finished speaking, a strong figure leaped out of the Azura field, but fell heavily to the ground. If not for Li Qingshan reaching out to pull him up, he would have been decapitated by the circular blade. Yin Qing straightened up, somewhat disheveled. This is a small world? How's it inside? Luo Ho Xiaoming asked. The crack has mostly healed. The passage will reopen soon, and the aura is already beginning to seep in. Yin Qing's expression changed, and she immediately forgot about the heavy shackles this world had placed on her. Originally, she did not have to worry too much. However, she had obtained a drop of divine blood from Luo Ho Xiaoming, which was equivalent to branding herself as a member of the Rahu race. Once the owner of the giant eye charged in, she would definitely not have a good ending. It was wishful thinking to want to be reborn in the Azura realm. Man, let me go. We're going to destroy the Azura field, Luo Ho Xiaoming said. Hey, why do I feel like I've suffered a great loss? Li Qingshan was very dissatisfied. He had obtained the Azura field with great difficulty. It had only evolved to its current level after experiencing many great battles. Luo Ho Xiaoming said, lazily, I advise you not to have any other thoughts. You once helped me obstruct him. Just based on this alone, he won't let you off. Don't worry, I said I would protect you. I will naturally protect you. Li Qingshan was not an indecisive person. He tossed the Azura field to Luo Ho Xiaoming. Luo Ho Xiaoming weighed the Azura field in his hands, but he was in no hurry to destroy it. Li Qingshan also admired his composure. What are you waiting for? I can use this Azura field to turn your army into an Azura army. Gu Yenying's eyes lit up. After today's battle, the fatal flaw of this army was revealed. This was because they were all made up of mortals. Even with the help of the militarists, they could only suppress ordinary martial artists at most. To deal with innate experts or qi practitioners, she still had to take action. However, she was not very strong normally. Without Li Qingshan's protection, it would be very difficult to defend against the assassinations of peerless experts. Even if Li Qingshan could protect her, the ordinary soldiers could not. If the main camp was constantly ambushed, it would not take long for the morale of the army to be destroyed. In this world where individual strength was greater than group strength, the army had too many flaws. Humph, you got off easy, Li Qingshan said. I traded my horse for this. Gu Yenying smiled. She then asked Luo Ho Xiaoming, when can we start? No rush. Time passes very slowly here. Go and prepare first. Sky Scar, Sword Tears. The next morning, Gu Yenying gathered the army outside the city. Tens of thousands of enemy corpses piled up into a terrifying mountain. Li Qingshan and the others stood on the mountain of corpses and looked down at the dense mass of human heads. Fei Hong tried her best not to look at the mountain of corpses. She carefully asked Li Qingshan, Your Highness, what are you going to do? Don't worry, it's a good thing. Today, I'll use my treasures to give everyone benefits. However, how much you can receive will depend on your own luck. Li Qingshan had already understood from Luo Ho Xiaoming that although this ceremony could turn many people into Azuras, they were still fake Azuras. Not only was their strength far inferior to the real Azuras, if they did not have an Azura's heart, they would very quickly be beaten back to their original form. In fact, they might not even be able to become fake Azuras. He then asked Inqing beside him, "Are you feeling better?" "Reporting to your highness, I'm much better." Li Qingshan smiled. "That's good. I'll think of a way to help you recover your strength. As long as there's fighting and killing, it's fine. I almost forgot. You're a real Azura. After resting for so long, it's time to resume my journey." Inqing gazed into the distance. In the thin morning mist, the mountains rose and fell continuously. This place reminded her of her hometown. It was also so narrow and small. She was once as weak as that girl named Fei Hong, but now she possessed the divine blood of the Rahu clan. Even if it was only a drop, it was a qualitative change. Fei Hong looked at her enviously and even a bit jealous. "Qingshan, are they waiting for you to speak?" Gu Yenying asked. Li Qingshan took a step forward and said in a loud voice, "Everyone has received their rewards, right?" "The rising great director," everyone loudly answered, their voices shaking the heavens. "Very good, but that's nothing. What I'm going to give you is far more than that. The Galloping Horse City behind me is just a small test. We're going to seize the entire world. We're going to make those high and mighty clans and sects, as well as those arrogant martial arts experts, all die. We're going to pile up mountains of corpses and trample all those people who stepped on your heads. Long live the hero king." Following Li Qingshan's words, everyone gradually forgot their fear and sorrow. Their fighting spirit ignited, and their voices shook the earth and the heavens. "You all know that the Fiend Star has arrived. Now, all the experts in the world are looking for it in the north, but they'll never find it because the Fiend Star is in my hands. Now, I'm going to distribute its power to all of you so that you can also have the chance to become peerless experts like the seven slaughtering demon lord." Li Qingshan's words silenced the sea of people. Then cheers erupted as if they were going to break through the heavens. Even the left and right protectors were dumbfounded. Their suspicions were answered. As expected, he was related to the Fiend Star. Then their eyes were filled with fervor. Li Qingshan turned around and signaled to Luo Ho Xiaoming, "Let's begin." Luo Ho Xiaoming bit his index finger and lightly tapped on the Azura field. In an instant, the runes hidden in the Azura field suddenly expanded, turning into complicated blood-colored lines. A faint, blood-colored fog covered a radius of 10 miles. It contained a strong killing intent, but the effect it brought was completely different from that of the Stone of Slaughter. At this time, Ma Xingkong was leading a large group of people to the Galloping Horse City, but he saw that the sky was dyed blood red. Something happened in the Galloping Horse City. "Everyone, hurry up!" Ma Xingkong ordered and whipped his horse with all his might. Then he turned to the group of Xiantian masters, led by Zhang Yuntian, and said, "Everyone, please help me this time. Ma family will never forget your kindness." Chapter 1199. The bloody light that reflected the sky made Zhang Yuntian feel slightly uneasy. However, when he looked back, he realized that other than the people from the Ma clan, everyone else seemed to be at ease. Although the Society of the Heavens had a large number of people, the number of true masters could be counted on one hand. Due to the descent of the demon star, almost 1/3 of the masters in the world had gathered here. None of the 7 major sects were absent. This was not something that the chivalrous king could contend against. As for the army that was made up of ordinary people, no one would take them seriously. No matter how many ants there were, they were still ants. I would like to see if the chivalrous king really has 3 heads and 6 arms like the rumors say. Even if he really has 3 heads and 6 arms, How can he block Master's great taming tiger fists? Monk Fu, who laughed and accepted the compliment calmly. There were indeed only a few people in the world who could block one of his fists. The group passed through the dense forest. In front of them was a large river with many ships of all sizes. This was where Li Qingshan had landed. When they saw the scene outside the Galloping Horse City from afar, they were all shocked. The bloody lines crisscrossed in the air. The thick, bloody fog shrouded tens of thousands of people. All of them were standing still and facing a hill. The area outside the Galloping Horse City is flat. Where did this hill come from? Just as they had such doubts, they saw through the bloody fog and realized that it was a mountain of corpses. All of them had changed color. Such a terrifying and mysterious scene was unheard of. Ah, Ma Xingkong screamed. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. There were many familiar faces in the mountain of corpses. Li Qingshan heard the voice and looked back. They came at the right time. What should we do? I won't move. I won't move. Gu Yenying said calmly, "It would be strange if you didn't move. Why don't you look at what's under our feet?" Li Qingshan stepped on ahead. It was the old man in the brocade robe who was killed by him. It seemed that he was placed there because he had a higher status. "I will not live under the same sky as you." Ma Xingkong's howl traveled across the river. That's true. But then again, why is there a mountain of corpses? Gu Yenying looked at Luo Ho Xiaoming strangely. She had thought that he was going to be used as a sacrifice, but it seemed like he wasn't going to be used. Pile it up for fun. Is there no use at all? Gu Yenying frowned. In order to pile up this mountain of corpses, she did not sleep the entire night and personally commanded the troops. What can a pile of corpses do? Luo Ho Xiaoming glanced at her in disdain. The other people standing on the mountain of corpses didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They had endured all kinds of emotions to stand here, and it was all because of this brat's casual words. "Do you think this is a pile of sand?" "Huh." Li Qingshan patted Luo Ho Xiaoming's small shoulders. "Well done. No problem." "Hey, Li Qingshan, you should also be more serious. The opponents are all experts. Quickly take out your flower and kill them," Gu Yenying said in annoyance. Right now, other than her and Li Qingshan, everyone else was at the crucial moment of turning into an Azura. "I'm not going. I just sealed my blade yesterday. If you want to go, go by yourself." Li Qingshan was unhappy to think that he sealed so seriously yesterday. How could he slap himself in the face like this? "If I can go, why would I need you? Don't talk nonsense. Go." The army couldn't be mobilized. Right now, Gu Yenying's strength was very weak. She definitely couldn't stop so many experts. If not for Luo Ho Xiaoming's sudden appearance and bringing the last resort frenzied blade, even if they could mobilize the army, this battle would be a bitter one. Fine. Li Qingshan shrugged, helplessly. Holding the hilt of his blade, he jumped down from the mountain of corpses. The frenzied blade's spirit came to his senses and immediately laughed at Li Qingshan. Veins popped on Li Qingshan's forehead. When he reached the riverbank, he was already angry. He shouted at Ma Xingkong, "Old man, what are you yelling about? Is your whole family dead?" You, Ma Xingkong almost fainted from anger. His face turned red and purple. He pointed at Li Qingshan, but couldn't say a word. He wanted to cross the river and fight him to the death. "Brother Ma, please wait. This could be a trap," Zhang Yuntian said. Ma Xingkong looked back. Other than his own family members, everyone else's faces were filled with fear. The river in front of them was so big that only a few Xiantian realm masters could cross it easily. He was an experienced Jianghu man. He suppressed his anger and said, I will listen to you, alliance leader. He then said to the crowd, no matter who kills this bastard and avenge my clan, I am willing to repay you with 10 cities. As soon as he said that, everyone was tempted. 10 cities had a radius of at least 100 miles and a population of hundreds of thousands. It was enough to establish a clan. My clan is finished, Zhang Yuntian silently said in his heart. That mountain of corpses was the foundation of the Moth family for almost 200 years. Originally, he thought that the Under the Heavens faction only relied on their numbers to attack the surrounding cities. He didn't expect that the Galloping Horse City would also be so easily breached. They couldn't even defend for a day. Even if they won this battle, their forces would be greatly reduced. The 10 cities were just a small favor. On the other side of the river, the figure with arms that reached his knees matched the rumor. He asked sternly, are you Li Qingshan? Yes, I am, Li Qingshan said. Zhang Yuntian's expression changed. He pointed his halberd and shouted, devil, I thought you were just a hypocrite fishing for fame. I didn't expect you to be so perverse. You made the whole martial arts world your enemy. You are worse than a beast. You are wrong. I am like a beast, but I am not worse than a beast. In 9 transformations of celestial and demon, the phoenix was a bird and the tiger was a beast. Li Qingshan's words were true. Zhang Yuntian's expression became more and more gloomy, and the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. He had never seen such a scene in his life, nor had he met such an opponent. Alliance leader, this Li Qingshan is just a clown trying to buy time. They seem to be carrying out some kind of ritual. Now is the best time to attack. We must not let them succeed. Ma Xingkong said loudly, Almsgiver Ma is right. Since ancient times, good and evil have never coexisted. With the few of us working together, can we not deal with him? I don't think this Li Qingshan is anything special other than his unusually long arms. Maybe he's a hybrid of the white ape king and a human woman. Monk, tiger subduing, saw that Li Qingshan was emitting an aura that seemed to have entered the innate level, but it was not strong. Even if he had a secret technique to hide his true strength, with the few of them working together, even the white ape king would be defeated. Before he finished speaking, he suddenly saw his straw sandals and couldn't help but blink, not understanding what had happened. With a thud, his bald head hit the ground, leaving only half of his body standing. Zhang Yuntian's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He wondered if he was dreaming. On the other side of the river, Li Qingshan had only waved his blade, and Monk, tiger subduing, was cut in half at the waist. What the hell is that thing on the other side? The others also came to their senses, and they almost went crazy on the spot. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.